Chapter 1080. Since Yi Tianyun refused to queue up, the person could only give up. The cultivators at the side started to mock him. He thinks that your queue is too long and wants to see if there's a place in front where he can cut the queue. You little brat, just go and queue up at the back. You're an eyesore standing here. There are no humans in front. Don't even think about cutting the queue. It's easy to cut the queue. Come here. I'll let you cut the queue for just 100 star stones. 100 star stones? Isn't that too much? It only costs 10 star stones to register. Is it the same? If you want to register faster, you have to pay the price. They started to mock him. Those at the front even offered a high price for Yi Tianyun to cut the queue. They felt that Yi Tianyun wanted to queue faster, and that was why he didn't choose to queue with his clansmen. This action undoubtedly hurt the clansman who had to take care of Yi Tianyun. He was also a little embarrassed. He was doing this out of kindness, but Yi Tianyun didn't appreciate it. Brother, thank you very much. However, I'm not here to register, so it's meaningless to me. Yi Tianyun thanked the youth. When he looked carefully, he realized that there was a reception in front of him. There was no one there, and a person was sitting there, looking very bored, as if waiting for something. His eyes lit up, and he walked forward. The cultivators at the side saw him and were puzzled. That brat, he can't be thinking of registering over there, right? Seems like it. Isn't that place recruiting inner hall disciples? The requirements are very strict. Did that brat meet the requirements? Meet the requirements, my ass. How long has it been since anyone has met the requirements? He's probably new and doesn't know the rules here. That's right. He must be new and doesn't know the rules. He's going to make a fool of himself. They all laughed. This kind of situation wasn't rare. Newcomers came over and saw that there was no one else in the queue, so they came over to queue up. Who knew that the requirements were very strict? Not to mention meeting the requirements, he couldn't even meet the most basic requirements. Yi Tianyun came in front of the deacon and said, I'm here to join the God Creation Palace. As he spoke, he handed over his identity token. The other party casually took it and examined it. Champion of the Ascension Battle of the Gods, possessor of the demonic fire, failed. What? The champion of the domain of the gods, domain of the ascending heavens, also has a demonic flame? He suddenly bounced up, and his voice was so loud that it startled everyone in the queue. That's right. Is there a problem? Yi Tianyun said calmly, do I pass? Qualified, absolutely qualified. Please come with me. This deacon was extremely excited. He could finally recruit someone. No one had come for a long time. He really wanted to die. Can you bring a friend with you? Of course, he won't be taking the inner hall test with me. He will be taking the ordinary test. As he spoke, he pointed at the young man who had helped him earlier. At this moment, all the cultivators in the queue were stunned, including the young man who was pointed at. The deacon glanced at him and nodded. Come over, I'll bring you in. It's on the way anyway. This sudden situation made the cultivator's eyes light up, and he quickly ran towards Yi Tianyun. His original dissatisfaction with Yi Tianyun immediately disappeared. Immediately, the deacon brought the two of them in. The guards in front didn't even stop them. With the deacon leading the way, they naturally wouldn't stop them. What's going on? That kid has the demonic fire. That's right. I heard that he's the champion of the Ascension Battle of the Gods. What the hell, there hasn't been a single person signing up in 100 years. Why is he here this time? Damn it, we don't even have to queue. The key is that the deacon is recommending us. The passing rate will definitely be higher. All of them were regretting. If they had treated Yi Tianyun better, it would definitely be their turn. Now, all they had to think about was whether Yi Tianyun would take revenge on them. When the time came and they became disciples, they would have the power to kill. As odd job workers, they could be easily kicked out of this place. At that time, they would really want to cry but no tears would come out. The originally mocking expressions had now turned bitter. It was worse than eating a fly. At the same time, Tianyun followed the deacon forward. Behind him was the slightly uneasy young man. He was really nervous and didn't know what to say. Relax, there's no need to be so nervous. This way, there's no need to queue. Tianyun stretched out his hand and patted the young man's shoulder, indicating that he shouldn't be so nervous. The young man wiped his sweat and nodded. Brother, thank you for bringing me in. I didn't expect you to have the qualifications to sign up here. I was wrong. I thought you really felt that the queue was too long and you didn't want to join my side. It's okay. Work hard and you will definitely have a foothold here in the future. After saying that, he took out a low-grade reincarnation level weapon and stuffed it into the young man's hand. This is a gift for you. Thank you for your kindness just now. This is a low-grade reincarnation level weapon. It's too precious. I can't accept it. The young man's hands were trembling. To him, this was an extremely precious treasure. Accept it. Work hard. Tianyun patted the young man's shoulder. The deacon at the side glanced at him and said, "We're here. You can directly go in and sign up. As for whether you will be hired, that will depend on your own ability." The young man nodded heavily and bowed deeply to Tianyun. Thank you, brother. In the future, when I am successful, I will definitely repay you. After saying that, he took the weapon and ran to sign up. With a good foundation, he could walk more steadily. Thus, he chose to accept the weapon and didn't refuse anymore. Subsequently, Tianyun followed the deacon and continued walking forward. As he walked, he asked, "May I ask why there are so few people signing up here?" The conditions of the god's palace are so harsh. Even those with demon fire might not be hired. Thus, there are very few people signing up. There are already fewer people with demon fire to begin with, so it is even more difficult to sign up. The deacon was very helpless. Be it my place or the other passageways, there are fewer people. Those with demon fire aren't everywhere on the streets, so it's not easy to find them. If he couldn't find anyone, he wouldn't be able to obtain any benefits. How could he not be anxious? Tianyun nodded. Demon fire was already very rare and basically 1 in a million. Furthermore, there was the Elixir Refinement Palace to recruit people. Those with demon fire could go to the Elixir Refinement Palace, which caused the number of people to decrease. In terms of practicality, the Elixir Refinement Palace had more people. After all, weapons were ultimately external objects. If one could refine a good elixir, consuming it could increase one's cultivation, which was obviously more important. Fortunately, you came. Otherwise, I would have to be punished. The deacon said agitatedly, "Please be selected as a disciple. Only then will I get some benefits." Chapter 1081. Under the guidance of the warden, they walked forward. The warden seemed to have not spoken for hundreds of years as he kept chatting with him. What the deacon said was basically complaining about the things here, complaining about one thing after another. He complained about all the problems in the God Creation Palace, which made Tianyun feel like his head was about to explode. However, he obtained a lot of useful information, which was that the requirements were extremely harsh. The demon fire was only the most basic requirement, and other abilities were also needed. Therefore, it was already pretty good if 1 out of 10 people who came to participate in the disciple selection was accepted. It was obvious how harsh the requirements were. It was already very difficult to have the demon fire, and they still had to choose disciples from those who possessed the demon fire. It was extremely harsh. If it were any other faction, they would be fine with the demon fire. They could take their time and not be so harsh. However, the God Creation Palace was different. It had to be extremely strict. Just having the demon fire wasn't enough, they also needed a stable foundation. For example, if one's comprehension in forging was too poor, they wouldn't be accepted as a disciple. If one wasn't meticulous enough, they wouldn't be accepted as a disciple either. The requirements for selecting disciples were getting harsher and harsher. The key was that the disciples here were discriminated against. No matter who it was, once they joined, they would take turns to make things difficult. Even if they passed, they would be chased away. Therefore, the God Creation Palace had fewer and fewer people. On the other hand, the Elixir Refinement Palace kept accepting disciples to strengthen itself. This was the result of the management's arrogance and indulgence, which led to such a situation. Why do I feel like I've entered the Black Palace? Yi Tianyun looked at the warden who was leading the way and asked, "Can I join somewhere else?" "How can you? You're already here. If you really can't join, you can join other palaces." How could the warden let Yi Tianyun escape? As long as he brought someone in, he would benefit. Whether he succeeded or not, he would still benefit. If he succeeded, the benefits he would obtain would be doubled. Yi Tianyun was dragged by the warden towards the God Refinement Palace in front. This God Refinement Palace was no different from the other palaces. They were all made of firestone. Before they even got close, they could feel the heat waves. If their cultivation was too low, they would really be roasted. "It's here, let's go in." The deacon dragged Yi Tianyun inside. After walking in, what came into view was not a huge formation. Instead, it was completely empty. There was only an old man sitting at the side, looking drowsy. It looked very desolate, like a declining family that no one wanted to join. As soon as he entered, the drowsy old man suddenly opened his eyes. A beam of golden light shot out from his eyes and fiercely hit Yi Tianyun's body, as if it wanted to see through him. "Elder Dong Yun, this is a disciple who has come to take the entrance test." The deacon walked over eagerly and rubbed his palms together. "He has the demonic fire, and he's also the champion of the ascending battle of the deity realm. He's more than qualified to enter the assessment. Divine Domain Ascension Battle's first place." Elder Dong Yun widened his eyes and squinted a little. He looked him up and down and said, "A genius from Fanyu? You even have the demon fire. This is rare. But very good, there's finally something to play with." Elder Dong Yun." He rubbed his palms and looked at Elder Dong Yun like a child begging for candy. Go, 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 I know what you're thinking. Go and collect your reward." Elder Dong Yun waved his hand impatiently. "Many thanks, Elder Dong Yun." The deacon's face is full of joy, and he hurriedly turned around and left. When he passed by Yi Tianyun, his eyes showed a bit of pity. "Boy, keep it up, you can do it." After encouraging Yi Tianyun, he quickly left to get the reward. Yi Tianyun frowned. He felt as if he had been sold. Elder Dong Yun clapped his hands. Clap, clap, clap sounds echoed in the refining god temple. Nothing happened after that. It was no different from before. Elder Dong Yun walked over with a smile. Seeing his smile, Yi Tianyun felt his blood run cold. He felt as if he was a prey being targeted. There hasn't been a new disciple for about 2 to 3 years. I wonder how your standard is. The previous one was very weak and couldn't even pass the most basic test. Elder Dong Yun looked at him and grinned. If you pass our test, not only will you be able to join the God Creation Palace, but we will also nurture you with all our might. We can even give you the right to cultivate in the heaven-pilfering divine land. Basically, as long as we can get it, we will give it to you. The moment he opened his mouth, it was shockingly tempting. It was as though he was saying that as long as he had it, he would give it to him. Yi Tianyun was expressionless. To be able to provide so many benefits meant that it must be an extremely cruel test. From the looks of it, this Elder Dong Yun preferred to play with tests. In just a moment, a group of people surged in from outside and quickly made the place lively. Finally, a newcomer. He looks rather young. I wonder what his abilities are like. Hee, let's see if he can pass the test of us senior brothers. It won't be that easy to join. Yo, he's a human. A human that can control demonic fire. He's not simple. I wonder how his standard is and if he can withstand our abuse. Oh, no, our test. The ones that surged in weren't the other elders, but some senior brothers and sisters. There weren't many of them, only about a dozen of them. However, the weakest of them was at the 8th refinement Earth Monarch realm, while the strongest was at the 6th or 7th refinement Lord of Heaven realm. It could be said that there were many geniuses. They sized up Yi Tianyun with excited faces, as though they had found something fun. Seeing how excited they were, Yi Tianyun's heart sank. It seemed like these people were treating the test as a form of entertainment. However, he didn't see any disdain in their eyes, nor did they look down on him. They wouldn't look down on him just because he was from the human race. They were all excited. Little junior brother, we'll call you little junior brother for the time being. If you join us, we'll give you a gift for our first meeting. If anyone bullies you in the future, just tell us and we'll avenge you. Ha, senior brother High Dragon, is it really okay for you to say that? What's not good about it? The one from before was scared away by us. If we don't give them something, they won't have the motivation to take the test. All of them started discussing, and their eyes were constantly sizing up Yi Tianyun. Among them, the one that made Yi Tianyun's hair stand on end was an absolute beauty at the side. Her beautiful eyes revealed a burning gaze, and she even licked her lips at him as though she had seen food. Little brother, if you perform well, senior sister will bring you to a fun place. She smiled slightly, and her beauty was enough to topple nations. Chapter 1082. Their enthusiasm made Yi Tianyun feel a little overwhelmed. This was his first time facing these tests, and they were so enthusiastic that he was not used to it. Of course, it was better than being discriminated against. That was even more displeasing. At the very least, they were not disgusting. At most, they were a little more enthusiastic. They did not look like a test, but more like they had found something fun to do. I am here to take the test. Senior brothers and sisters, are you all examiners? Yi Tianyun looked at the dozen people surrounding him. This was his first time seeing such a situation. That's right. Why else do you think we are here? They looked at each other and smiled, a hint of mischief in each other's eyes. Boom! At this time, the door behind him closed, and a loud sound echoed throughout the area. Yi Tianyun turned his head and saw that his two senior brothers had run to the back and closed the door. What's going on? Yi Tianyun asked curiously. Nothing much, we just don't want others to disturb you. This is a very important test, we cannot be disturbed. That senior brother High Dragon was the eldest. Among all the senior brothers and sisters, his cultivation was the highest, reaching the 7th level of the Lord of Heaven. The second strongest was the senior sister who tempted Yi Tianyun. She was called Senior Sister Fire Lotus, reaching the 6th level of the Lord of Heaven. They all broke through from the 8th refinement of the Earth Monarch realm, not the 9th. However, this was already very strong. After all, the 8th refinement of the Earth Monarch realm was Lord of Heaven. In the first grade God realm, this level was already at the elder level. Here, they could only be considered disciples. The difference in treatment was like heaven and earth. Yi Tianyun was speechless. How was this not wanting others to disturb him? They were afraid that he would run away. What is the test content? Yi Tianyun looked at them, as if they have thought about the assessment content hundreds of times, and now they put all of their efforts on him. As for the content, we have already thought about it. We will test you for 10 rounds. One of them jumped out and said. 10 rounds? Yi Tianyun almost vomited blood. 10 rounds at the start. Wasn't this torture? Ahem, don't go overboard. Elder Dongyun walked out and glared at the disciple. He then turned to Yi Tianyun and said with a smile, there are only 3 tests. High Dragon, Fiery Lotus, and I will set the test. Once you pass, you will become a disciple of the God Creation Palace. You must not leave during the process. You can't leave the stage in the middle. If I can't pass, why should I continue? Tianyun was puzzled. Of course. If you can't pass, then skip to the next round. Even if you fail, you will still have the chance to become a disciple, said Elder East Cloud with a smile. There's such a logic. Tianyun was shocked. The rules were really messy. He didn't even need to pass the test to become a disciple. This meant that they would be recruited based on the overall standard, not just one aspect, but all aspects. If there was something special, they would be recruited. If there was nothing special, they would not be recruited at all. As for passing completely, that meant that he had been chosen. Of course. In short, you can't back out in the middle. You must finish our assessment, understand? Their eyes glowed, and they seemed to be unwilling to let him leave. Tianyun felt like a sheep entering a tiger's den. He wondered if he had really come to the wrong place and if he had to use shift to escape. This assessment won't be life-threatening, right? Asked Tianyun. They looked at each other and actually hesitated. This hesitation meant that their lives were really in danger. Seeing Tianyun's gaze, they smiled embarrassedly. There will be some life-threatening danger. Our assessment will definitely not be that simple. But don't worry, it won't be very dangerous, Senior Brother High Dragon said with a smile. Tianyun suddenly felt speechless. He could only say, all right then. Can we start the assessment now? Yes, yes. They nodded repeatedly. After looking at each other, Elder East Cloud walked out and said with a smile, then, I'll be the first to conduct the assessment. After he walked out, he looked at Tianyun and said, the first round won't be very difficult for you. The first thing to master in artifact refinement is to control fire. If you can't control fire well, everything will be nonsense. Therefore, the first test I'm giving you now is to burn this piece of ice into a thin needle for me. With that said, he raised his hand and threw the piece of ice in front of Tianyun, indicating for him to burn it into a thin needle. Tianyun was instantly stunned. This was simply a freakish test. To burn a piece of ice into a thin needle, the amount of strength needed was not just difficult, it was simply freakishly difficult. The control of strength needed to be very precise. Especially since this piece of ice was very ordinary, it was formed from very ordinary solidified water. This meant that as long as the fire was slightly increased, it would directly burn to death. It might be possible if it was a small burn, but to melt it into a thin needle, the difficulty was rather freakishly difficult. The thin needle was already small enough. Just touching it a little would immediately cause it to completely vaporize. If you can still make a small hole on it and allow the needle and thread to pass through, I'll reward you with a high-grade reincarnation level treasure. Senior Brother High Dragon even added a condition at the side, his face full of excitement. Not only him, but everyone else also looked at Tianyun, wanting to see what he would do. Tianyun was instantly speechless. Wasn't this deliberately making things difficult for him? If he used energy to carve it, it would not take more than a second to cut it into a thin needle. But if he changed it to flames, the difficulty would be too great. Isn't this a little too difficult? Tianyun frowned and said, with your ability to control fire, can all of you reach this step? He had experience in this area, so of course he knew how difficult it was. If everyone could reach this step, they could be said to be a super master of controlling fire. There are also very few of us who can reach this step, but it's not that there aren't any. Only a strict standard can prove your ability. Senior Brother High Dragon said very frankly, causing Tianyun to roll his eyes. This was simply making things difficult for him. That's right, this is our excellent standard. Let's see how much you can complete. Elder East Cloud's words made Tianyun understand something, which was that he did not really need to complete everything. After all, the difficulty was indeed very high. If he could make it very thin, even if it was not a thin needle, it would already be considered very good. Tianyun looked at them and said helplessly, all right then, I'll give it a try. Don't worry, we will give you 3 chances. After the 3 chances, choose the best one as your result this time, Elder East Cloud said. Yi Tianyun looked at the piece of ice in front of him, and the corner of his mouth curled into a trace of a smile. To him, this was really too easy. He was just pretending. He believed that his ability to control fire was definitely not weak. Chapter 1083. The senior brothers looked at each other and smiled. They felt that it was interesting to test the newcomer. They seemed to like this kind of thing and wanted to see how Yi Tianyun solved it. It should be said that they were like judges to see if the newcomer could become their future junior brother. At least the way he looked at Yi Tianyun didn't have the slightest contempt, nor did he look down on him. Just this point alone made Yi Tianyun feel quite comfortable and did not reject him. They seemed to be quite united and had a good relationship with each other, unlike the other forces which were basically incompatible. Only those with equal status or similar talents could have a topic to talk about. As for those with a bigger gap, they could not be bothered. This kind of atmosphere was quite bad and was not the environment that Yi Tianyun liked. It was different here. The atmosphere felt quite good. Hee, I remember that kid from last time. He burned it to nothing. His fire control is a little too weak, right? It's normal to burn it to nothing. Some people will just have flames, but their fire control is a mess. I remember there was someone with good fire control, but the result was like a stick. It's a little different from a thin needle. I can't even burn it into a thin needle, let alone drill a hole in it. You can't do it, but it doesn't mean that others can't. Senior sister Flaming Lotus can do it. Not to mention a thin needle, she can even burn a hair out. They were discussing while Yi Tianyun was preparing for the test. Yi Tianyun did not think much. He raised his hand and displayed the white bone fire. The moment this demonic fire appeared, everyone's eyes lit up. The white bone fire was a very good demonic fire, and they nodded. Then, Yi Tianyun quickly threw the flame on the ice. With a whoosh, the violent flame wrapped around the ice. Almost instantly, the ice was completely covered. Everyone was stunned. So simple and violent, didn't he burn the ice directly? After a while, the flame quickly disappeared, leaving behind a thin needle. It was similar to a normal needle. In just the blink of an eye, the ice block was burned into needles. His ability to control fire could be said to be terrifying. When everyone saw this, they were immediately dumbfounded. It turned out that they had encountered an expert in playing with fire. To be able to easily burn out fine needles, it was obvious that he was very experienced. Damn it, I'm not seeing things, right? This flame control is even better than Senior Sister Fiery Lotus. Bullshit. Senior Sister Huolian can make fine threads that are even thinner than a needle. Alright, you're much stronger than me anyway. They were all shocked by Yi Tianyun's move. He had thought that Yi Tianyun would fail, but who would have thought that he would succeed in an instant? I almost forgot to punch a hole in it. Yi Tianyun smiled and flicked his finger. A small flame flew out and easily pierced through the head of the needle, completely forming a needle. Then, he extended his hand and pushed the thin needle back into Elder Dongyun's hand. After Elder East Cloud received it, he picked it up and looked at it. He nodded in satisfaction. Looks like this level isn't too difficult for you. It can be said that your ability to control fire is very shocking. Looks like you've practiced a lot of techniques for controlling fire. They were all very satisfied with this and exclaimed in admiration at Yi Tianyun's performance. Are all the newcomers so strong now? One of them reached out and slapped his face. It was obvious that he was not as good as Yi Tianyun, which was why he did that. That's right. It seems that we're old. After training for so long, we're not as good as a newcomer. How embarrassing. They all shook their heads, feeling like they had been dealt a heavy blow. Their ability to control fire was not even half as good as Yi Tianyun's, but they could still join. From this, it could be seen that it was necessary to test one's ability to control fire, but it did not need to be at such a terrifying level. Fire control could be developed slowly in the future, so it was not the most important test here. Tianyun immediately noticed this. Since it was the first round, it probably would not be very strict. You're really good, kid. I was just saying it casually, and you really completed it. Senior brother Yulong took the needle and sized it up. He clicked his tongue and said, then, according to our agreement, I'll give you a high-grade reincarnation level treasure later. You can choose any one of them. This senior brother Yulong was very forthright. He did not go back on his word. However, this was not a big problem for him. With his ability, he could already forge high-grade reincarnation level treasures. There was some difficulty, but he could still forge them. Little brother, your ability to control fire is comparable to mine. Senior sister Fire Lotus squinted her eyes and smiled sweetly. When we join the God Creation Palace, can you spar with me for a while? Let's talk about it after I join. Tianyun wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. These people were really enthusiastic. Ahem, you passed the first round perfectly. It was indeed beyond my expectations. Your foundation is very good. It was a little beyond our expectations. Your ability is not bad. Elder Dong Yun revealed a smile. There are so many disciples here for the assessment. You're considered to be at the forefront. Then, I'll leave the second round to Yulong to set the question. Senior brother Yulong seemed to have waited for a long time. He ran out excitedly and said, I'll set the second round. The content is still fire control. Fire control again? Tianyun was stunned. He had already tried to control fire before, and now he was testing this again. Of course, it's not just simple fire control. Later on, you can forge any weapon or anything else. We'll keep disturbing you. If you can successfully complete this weapon, we'll consider it a pass. How about that? Senior brother Yulong laughed loudly. Everyone looked at each other and smiled. They could see the mischief in each other's eyes. Tianyun immediately knew what these guys were here for. They were here to help disturb him, right? They were really going to do it in a group and disturb him from the side. However, it was unprecedented for them to participate in the assessment as a group. It could be said that they were united as one to help the junior brothers who joined later. That's not a problem. Let's give it a try. Tianyun nodded. He wanted to see how far these people could go. It's good that there's no problem. We'll still give you 3 chances. We'll keep disturbing you. I hope you can maintain your fire control ability and don't be disturbed by us. Senior brother Yulong laughed loudly. The others looked at each other and smiled, as if they were laughing about something. I remember something. When we disturbed that guy previously, he directly exploded his cauldron. Pfft. I almost forgot if you didn't mention it. That was because the disturbance was too much, resulting in the explosion. Chapter 1084. Tianyun didn't say much. He quickly took out a pile of materials and prepared to refine a low-grade reincarnation-grade weapon. He wouldn't choose something with a high difficulty. He just chose something with a normal difficulty. God knows how these guys would interfere with him. Then, he quickly threw out a pile of materials and used the white flame bone fire to melt the materials. He didn't need a furnace to start refining. He didn't need a furnace to refine a weapon. This wasn't difficult for him. This move made them sigh. They felt that Tianyun was really bold. He actually didn't use a furnace. As expected of a first-rate fire control ability. He didn't even need a furnace. If it was me, I wouldn't dare to do this. That's right. Although it's only a low-grade reincarnation-grade weapon, it's still quite difficult without a furnace. They all recognized Tianyun's ability. To dare to do this, he must have excellent fire control ability. They didn't dare to do this, but there were others who dared to do it. When Yi Tianyun was melting, a piece of iron was suddenly thrown into the flames. It quickly mixed with the other materials. "Add it in for me, don't throw it out." Senior Marshal Brother Yulong laughed loudly and added a little seasoning for him. Yi Tianyun was startled. Then, he quickly controlled the white flame bonfire to melt the mixed materials. Then, he removed the impurities and quickly superimposed it with the already melted materials. With the addition of this material, the entire weapon's material changed. A change in the ratio could easily lead to failure. However, Yi Tianyun's control was quite perfect. He directly removed the impurities, leaving behind the purest thing. At the same time, he threw in a brand new material. This material and the material that senior apprentice Brother High Dragon threw in formed a perfect combination. They complemented each other and didn't affect anything. But compared to before, this weapon would have more effects. When the senior apprentice brothers and sisters saw this scene, they all praised him. To be so decisive, it proved that he was quite experienced. If Yi Tianyun didn't add in the new material, this weapon would still have problems. After all, it was impossible to eliminate the negative effects of this material just by relying on the ability to control fire. For example, if he were to throw in an ice stone, he would need to use another material that could withstand the ice stone to successfully refine the weapon. Yi Tianyun quickly found the right materials and controlled them perfectly. There was no doubt that he had a good foundation. Interesting. Then I'll add this. Then, someone threw a piece of ore into the melted liquid. Yi Tianyun was quick to react. He quickly wrapped it up, melted it, and threw out new materials to make the perfect mix. "I'll throw one too." All of them seemed to think that the matter wasn't too serious, and kept throwing out new materials. This was what they meant by interference. They didn't mean that they were going to beat up Yi Tianyun while he was forging. This was no longer a disturbance, but a deliberate attempt to chase people out. The content of their assessment was very rough, but at the same time, it was also a very important foundation. What was being tested now was his ability to adapt and his ability to control fire. Now, all of them were basically taking turns to throw out ores, special materials, and even spiritual medicine. All of them were dissolved by him one by one and integrated into the pile of materials. He didn't know what he would be able to forge in the end, but he only needed to pay attention to one thing, and that was that he couldn't fail or explode. Even if he forged a brick in the end, it would at least be a brick that could smash someone to death, and not a pile of powder. If the forging failed normally, it would directly explode and turn into a pile of waste materials that couldn't be used at all. In the end, all the spectators threw in a material. Yi Tianyun didn't reject any of them, and he couldn't reject any of them. He solved the integration problem perfectly every time, and so far, there hadn't been any major problems. The biggest problem was that he didn't know what kind of weapon he could forge from the big ball of liquid. It looked so mixed, and probably had all kinds of attributes. This kind of weapon was relatively weak. No one could have all the attributes. Being too comprehensive meant being mediocre. Of course, it wasn't a requirement for the weapon to be strong, but for the weapon to be usable, and that was enough. This newbie is really amazing. He's the strongest newbie I've seen so far. He threw out so many materials, and nothing happened to him. That's right. If it were me, I would have failed long ago. He's completely fine. It's watertight. Damn it. Why do I feel more inferior as the test goes on? They couldn't help but scratch their heads. They originally wanted to see how long Yi Tianyun could last. Who knew that he would persevere all the way, and nothing happened to him? Condense. Yi Tianyun shouted and quickly formed hand seals. The ball of liquid flew up quickly, and under his hands, it was constantly kneaded in the air. Then, he fell heavily from the ground. At the same time, he condensed his energy into a giant hammer and kept smashing it down. He kept smashing the ball of liquid. As there were too many materials, he kept making the materials wider. Then, the shape of an incomparably huge sword gradually appeared in everyone's sight. With so many materials, he could only forge a relatively large weapon, and a huge sword was a good choice. Under his constant hammering, a huge sword was quickly formed. It was flashing all kinds of colors, and looked very strange. This meant that he had fused too many materials. If it were anyone else, it would be a waste of materials. But to be able to fuse them and not explode, it already proved that Yi Tianyun's ability was very amazing. Dang! With a crisp sound, Yi Tianyun kept the void hammer, and a colorful huge sword appeared in front of everyone. Its grade was not low, and it was almost a mid-grade reincarnation level weapon. There were a lot of mixed materials, but the quality was not low. The materials they threw out were not very precious, but they were not bad either. Usually, they wouldn't carry any garbage with them, so the materials they threw out were not bad. Now that they could forge a weapon that was close to a mid-grade reincarnation level weapon, it was definitely shocking. It's done. Yi Tianyun threw the huge sword to senior brother Yulong. After senior brother High Dragon received it, he reached out to touch it and said in amazement, "You're really amazing. You managed to forge it perfectly just like that. Just based on your reaction speed alone, your standard can be considered above average among us." Chapter 1085. They could not help but praise the giant sword that Yi Tianyun had forged. They were not stingy with their compliments. They were more and more satisfied with Yi Tianyun. Even Elder Dong Yun was looking at him with admiration. Without a doubt, he was qualified to join the God Creation Palace after passing these 2 rounds. "I wonder if I can pass this round, senior brother Yulong?" Yi Tianyun asked with a smile. "If you can't pass this round, then no one in the world can pass it. Be it your control or your ability to adapt, they are both superb." Senior brother Yulong smiled. "We are very satisfied with this. You passed the second round easily and perfectly. Although you performed perfectly in the first 2 rounds, there is still the 3rd round. If you can't pass the 3rd round, it will be more difficult for you to be evaluated." As he spoke, senior brother Yulong looked at senior sister Fire Lotus. Senior sister Fire Lotus was the one who came up with the final test. Yi Tianyun squinted his eyes. He thought that they would hire him without passing the 3rd round. Who knew there was a 3rd round? From their tone, it seemed like the 3rd round was the most important one. Senior sister Fire Lotus walked out and looked at him with a blushing face. She smiled. "Little junior brother, you're really capable. I'm more and more attracted to you." She even walked over and drew circles on his chest with her fingertip. It looked rather seductive. Yi Tianyun moved back a little and maintained a distance. He smiled. "Senior sister, you're too tempting. I'm afraid I can't control myself." "If you can't control yourself, then don't." Senior sister Fire Lotus smiled. It was really like a beautiful fire lotus blooming. It was red in 4 colors and looked rather beautiful. "Cough, cough. Tell me the content of the 3rd round," Yi Tianyun said. "You really don't know how to flirt." Senior sister Fire Lotus smiled. "The content of the 3rd round is very simple. Bring this weapon and follow me to the fiery mystic realm to kill demonic beasts to obtain the flame scale. Once you obtain the flame scale, you will pass the round perfectly." Flame scale. Yi Tianyun still had some impression of this item. It was one of the materials used to create high-grade reincarnation level treasures and was relatively precious. It was unique to the flame Qilin. Generally speaking, there was no need to kill the fire Qilin. All one had to do was subdue it and take it away. If he killed it, he wouldn't be able to obtain it in the future. Therefore, they would choose to catch it and peel off a little flame scale from time to time. After resting for a period of time, it would grow back. This was quite cruel, but some places would give it good food and drink, and nurture it as their companion. This way, he didn't even need to subdue it to obtain the flame scales, which would normally fall off. That's right. We have a fiery arcane realm here. There are many materials inside. There's also a flame qilin among them. We'll work together to subdue it and then pluck out its flaming scales, senior sister Huolian said. Sure, no problem. Yi Tianyun nodded and said. It wasn't difficult to subdue the flame qilin. To him, he could suppress it with one punch and knock it out. Then, it would be easy to get the scales. Then, let's go to the fiery arcane realm now. Senior sister Huolian waved at Yi Tianyun and led him forward. Senior brothers, you're not going. Yi Tianyun looked at them and asked curiously. Why are we going to the fiery arcane realm? We'll wait here for you guys to come back. Senior brother Yulong smiled and said, we have high hopes for you. This time, you must get it back successfully. Yi Tianyun was a little puzzled. He thought that they would come over together to watch. Who knew that they would stay here obediently? This made him feel strange. However, after thinking about it carefully, they were going to get the flaming scales. If a group of people came over, they would scare the flame qilin. After they left, everyone looked at each other and smiled. Then, they disappeared on the spot, going somewhere unknown. Under senior sister Huolian's lead, they came to the teleportation entrance of the fiery arcane realm. After explaining to the guard that it was a test, the guard immediately let them pass. They easily arrived at the fiery arcane realm through the teleportation formation. As soon as they arrived, Yi Tianyun felt that the temperature was even hotter than above. Looking around, there were still piles of flaming stones. It was no different from the ones outside. The only difference was that there were volcanoes at the side. There was also a lot of lava rolling on the side, forming rivers of lava. With their cultivation, it would not be a problem for them to fall for a short period of time. It would not cause them much harm. Yi Tianyun glanced to the side. Just as he was about to say something, a figure jumped into his arms. Little junior brother, are we not going to do anything? Senior sister Huolian jumped into his arms. Her beautiful eyes were full of temptation. She was not here to get the flaming scales. She was here to seduce him and do some private things. Luckily, there was no one around. Otherwise, they would have been misunderstood. Senior sister Huolian, what are you doing? Yi Tianyun grabbed her shoulder and pushed her forward. He said in a deep voice, we are here to get the flaming scales. Please behave yourself. Senior sister Huolian was tempting, but he was not interested. He had Shi Shuiyun in his heart. That was enough. Senior sister Huolian waved her hand and said in a bored tone, how boring. I think you are quite capable and much stronger than the others. Can't I have some fun? Senior sister Huolian, you are putting me in a difficult position, Yi Tianyun said in a deep voice. I know. It's a mission. You are so boring. It's just a flaming scale. I have it here. Senior sister Huolian took out a flaming scale and waved it in front of him. She smiled and said, how about it? I have the flaming scale now. You just need to play with me for a while and let me order you around. This flaming scale is yours. There is no need to look for the fire qilin. It is so hard to find. You might as well take it back. Moreover, I am the supervisor now. No one will think that the flaming scale is on us. You can just say that you took it. Her face was full of temptation. She still had the mission item in her hand. He did not need to look for the fire qilin. He only needed to accompany her. Not interested. I will get the flaming scale myself. Yi Tianyun did not even bother to look at her. He turned around and walked forward. Senior sister Huolian's smile deepened as she watched him leave. She followed him and said, all right, you are so inflexible. But I like inflexible people like you. I will go with you to find the flaming scale. I will not trick you this time. Chapter 1086. With Yi Tianyun's warning, senior sister Fire Lotus finally became more obedient. She didn't make any more moves and just followed obediently by the side. Tianyun carefully explored around. There are a lot of demon beasts here. There are also a lot of forging materials. It could be said to be a treasure trove of materials. It should be inside the God Creation Palace and not open to the public. Otherwise, this place would have been full of cultivators. Even though it was slightly dangerous, it was still within an acceptable range. Especially when one wanted good stuff and was unwilling to take risks, it was obviously very unreasonable. As they went deeper, the demon beasts became fewer and fewer. There weren't even any demon beasts around. At the same time, the quality of the materials around them was getting higher and higher, and their numbers were increasing. It wasn't that no one was collecting them, but that this was the territory of a powerful demon beast. We might be in the Flame Chelan's territory. Tianyun turned his head and looked to the side. He could already smell danger. The Flame Chelan was definitely not weak. It was at least above the level of the Lord of Heaven, and it was very powerful. With the Chelan's bloodline, how could it be weak? The Chelan's bloodline was ranked in the top 10. The power that it could unleash was definitely above most of the same level. That's right. We are already in the Flame Chelan's territory. Senior Sister Fire Lotus's expression turned serious and wasn't as exaggerated as before. Just as she finished her sentence, an angry roar came from the flame forest in front of them. It was like a roar from the underground abyss, and it was frightening. It's warning us not to get close, Senior Sister Fire Lotus said in a low voice. If that's the case, let's hurry over. We'll pass if we take the scales. Tianyun nodded, ignored the warning, and ran forward. Senior Sister Fire Lotus followed up with a long whip in her hand. It was very suitable for her character, and it was hot. Roar! Just then, a huge figure jumped out of the flame forest. The first thing that Tianyun felt was the extreme heat, as though it could burn a person. What appeared in front of them was the huge Flame Chelan, shrouded in flames. His entire body was covered in a thick layer of flaming scales, each of which contained an astonishing amount of flame energy. Even those at the level of the Lord of Heaven would not dare to casually touch the flaming scales, for fear of being burned. Of course, Tianyun wasn't worried about this. They didn't need to worry about the flaming scales burning them. Now, they only needed to worry about how to dig out the flaming scales from its body. Flame Chelan, super powerful divine beast, level 5 Lord of Heaven cultivation, possesses super demonic fire power, can burn everything. At the same time, the flaming scales on his body could withstand all damage. The super strong defense was enough to block a fatal attack. 5th stage Lord of Heaven, this Flame Chelan was truly powerful. This was a divine beast. Seeing this divine beast, Tianyun wanted to tame it for his own use. With such a powerful divine beast as a companion, how could he not feel at ease? Roar! The Flame Chelan roared at them again and issued a stern warning, signaling them to stay away. Go! Senior Sister Fire Lotus rushed towards the Flame Chelan without hesitation and whipped the long whip in her hand towards the Flame Chelan's body. Paw! The whip heavily hit the Flame Chelan's body. Such a heavy whip only left a shallow mark on the Flame Chelan's body, and the Flame Chelan quickly recovered as if nothing had happened. Roar! Senior Sister Fire Lotus's attack thoroughly enraged the Flame Chelan. It roared at her and a huge fireball whizzed towards her. As if the end of the world had come, the huge fireball fell from the sky and enveloped the entire land. Senior Sister Fire Lotus's complexion changed, and she quickly dodged to the side, but her speed was still a bit too slow, and the fireball had already exploded towards her. At this moment, a figure blocked in front of her, and a cold light flickered. Shio! The huge fireball was split into 2 halves by a spear. Tianyun grabbed Senior Sister Fire Lotus and fled to the side. Senior Sister Fire Lotus was stunned. She didn't expect that Tianyun would come so quickly, and even penetrate this terrible fireball with a spear. You stay here, I will deal with it. Tianyun motioned her to stay on the side. He alone was enough to deal with this flame Qilin. Wait! Senior Sister Fire Lotus hurriedly stopped him, but Yi Tianyun had already rushed forward alone, and was ready to penetrate this flame Qilin. Seeing Yi Tianyun rushing over, the flame Qilin was stunned, and turned to look at Senior Sister Fire Lotus with a confused look in its big eyes, as if it was asking for some instructions. Senior Sister Fire Lotus pointed at Yi Tianyun and nodded at the same time. Roar! The flame Qilin suddenly went crazy, and aimed at Yi Tianyun, and fiercely spat out several balls of flames. The power of each ball was stronger than the previous one, and directly blocked all of his escape routes. Break! Yi Tianyun's eyes narrowed, and he displayed violent heaven Ju, and a violent power was released along with the spear. It directly penetrated this huge fireball, and easily pierced it into two halves. The next moment, he rushed out of this exploding fireball, and in one fell swoop, he was in front of the flame Qilin, and swung his spear at its body. Under this fierce swing, a bang sound was heard, and the flame Qilin was smashed down from the sky like a fool. Boom! The flame Qilin heavily hit the ground, and a big pit was formed. Yi Tianyun didn't stop, and quickly chased after the flame Qilin, and was ready to launch another fierce attack on the flame Qilin. Wait a minute. At this time, Senior Sister Fire Lotus hurriedly blocked in front of the flame Qilin, and with a big hand in front of it, she said, "Little junior brother, don't attack it." What's wrong? Aren't we going to take the flame scale? A faint smile appeared on Yi Tianyun's face, as if he had already seen through some clues. This is our test, and you don't play according to the rules. How can you be so strong? Senior Sister Fire Lotus was very helpless. What do you mean by not playing according to the rules? Yi Tianyun pretended to be suddenly enlightened, and said, could it be that, in fact, the flame Qilin is actually your companion, and you just found it to test me? Yes, it is to test you. I have to say, the content of the last test seems to have failed. At this time, a group of people flew over, and these people were the senior brothers and senior sisters from before, and Elder Dong Yun. They were hiding at the side, and now that they knew that they had been exposed, they could only show themselves. Chapter 1087. The fire Qilin crawled up from the ground, not injured at all. Actually, Yi Tianyun didn't use much strength at all. The spearhead wasn't directly aimed at its body, but smashed down with the spear shaft. Thus, there wasn't much damage to speak of, not even a scratch. At most, it would hurt a little when it smashed down. To the fire Qilin, this was just a scratch, not a big problem. This was all done on purpose by Yi Tianyun. He was just playing along with Senior Sister Fire Lotus's performance. From the moment Senior Sister Fire Lotus entered, he knew that everything was an act. She probably fell for it. Senior Sister Fire Lotus was extremely talented, and he knew her true personality. She definitely wouldn't be so wanton. Everything was a trap, and he just fell for it. Now, it was proven that his guess was right. It was all just a test. From the start, Senior Sister Fire Lotus had set a trap for him. She showed interest in him in all aspects, and even tempted him in other aspects. Some couldn't control themselves and were tempted as soon as they entered. Then, everything would be lost. He was very sure that if he fell for it, no matter how perfect his performance was, he wouldn't be chosen as a disciple. Little junior brother, aren't you too strong? You messed up our plan. It wasn't easy for us to think of a trap, but you ruined it. Senior brother High Dragon was a little frustrated as he walked over with a helpless expression. It's fine. At least you resisted the temptation at the start. You didn't choose to hand in the Fire Lotus's scale. You even chose to protect her later. This is already in line with our selection criteria. There shouldn't be a need for the rest of the test. Elder East Cloud walked out and said with a smile, however, this was indeed unexpected. It was quite a strong attack, but it was still broken like that. It messed up the plan. Elder East Cloud, what was the original plan? Yi Tianyun smiled faintly. Fire Lotus was injured by the attack, and she brought you to escape. Hide in a cave, and reveal all sorts of precious treasures at the same time. Let's see if you would be tempted and run with them. Getting killed by the Fire Cheelant's attack isn't your fault. Some people will take the treasures and run. They won't prioritize saving people, and instead destroy the corpses. Elder Eastcloud shook his head, and a fierce look flashed across his eyes. Clearly, he had encountered such a situation before. Tianyun felt helpless. Wasn't this a trap? It was equivalent to luring him to commit a crime. If it was anyone else who saw someone injured and on the verge of death, they would have easily taken the treasures and left. This was a test of human nature. Should he insist on saving them and leave? Even if he was on the verge of death, he had to save him first. Instead of secretly taking a few treasures, destroying the corpses, or even abandoning the people. Little junior brother, I know what you're thinking. In the eyes of the outside world, our God Creation Palace is a God Creation Palace that deliberately makes things difficult for newcomers. We just want a sincere companion who can trust others with his back. Instead of scheming against each other and being jealous of each other. We are a family. We help and support each other. Senior Brother Hydreigon's expression was solemn. The others also nodded. There was no discrimination or mockery. Instead, they huddled together. They could only help and support each other. This was how a true senior brother should be, instead of scheming against each other and stabbing each other in the dark. This was the attitude that Tianyun admired the most. He wanted this kind of feeling. There was no discrimination, and being able to help each other was the best choice. It was not like some sects, where from the moment they joined, they had to scheme against each other. If one surpassed the other by just a little, the other would think of ways to belittle them or stab them in the dark. This kind of sect would not last long. There were too many scheming against each other. How could they develop? Therefore, he would not casually join any faction. Even if he did, he would at most stay for a period of time. It was impossible to stay for long. Now, the God Creation Palace was very suitable for him. It could even be said that they were very united. From the rumors, it was indeed difficult for newcomers. The tests were very difficult, but ability was only one part of the test. The real test was to test one's heart. It didn't require a particularly heaven-defying ability, just a good foundation. After all, no matter how extraordinary a fellow disciple was, if he was always high up and did not care about anyone, then what was the use of having him? Although many factions would rather have a strong disciple than a bunch of ordinary ones, for this place, what they needed was a sincere senior brother. This way, when they went out to fight, they could trust their backs. At this time, Senior Sister Fiery Lotus had already appeased the Flame Cheelan. They looked very close, and it could even be said that they had a master-servant relationship. After a simple exchange, Senior Sister Fiery Lotus walked over and asked, "Little junior brother, did you see through it long ago?" "Not really." Tianyun had a serious expression. In fact, he had seen through it long ago. If he could not even see through these tricks, he would be too easily fooled. However, he did not say it out loud to comfort them. If he had known from the beginning, he did not know what kind of blow they would have received. "Is that so?" Senior Sister Fiery Lotus nodded and chose to believe him. "Oh right, your Senior Sister Fiery Lotus is not so frivolous. She is usually very strict. If you casually tease her, be careful of getting burned." Senior Brother Hydreigon laughed and said, "It's just that she has to sacrifice herself in every test. Otherwise, how can we choose a sincere junior brother to join us?" Senior Sister Fiery Lotus rolled her eyes at him and reached out to caress the Flame Cheelan. She smiled faintly and said, "Little junior brother, you have passed our test perfectly this time. We welcome you to join our God's Creation Palace." "That's right, you passed perfectly. You passed all 3 tests with ease. It can be said that you passed with the best results in history." All of them cheered for Tianyun's addition. "Elder East Cloud, aren't you going to treat us? Senior brother High Dragon looked at Elder East Cloud and smiled. Sure, let's go. Elder East Cloud reached out to pat on Yi Tianyun's shoulder and smiled. Let's go. To celebrate the newcomer joining the God's Creation Palace, I will treat all of you to Drunken Stars for a drink. Drunken Stars for a drink? Elder East Cloud is really generous. I have never seen you treat us in the past. Cough cough, that was in the past. Now, Tianyun is rather capable and has the best results in history. Can we not celebrate? Elder East Cloud's face was beaming. How could he not be happy to recruit an all-round genius? If he was happy, he would definitely be willing to pay a huge price for a trip to Drunken Stars. The rest could not refute this point. Among them, senior brother High Dragon reached out and placed his hand on Yi Tianyun's shoulder. He smiled and said, "It is all thanks to junior brother Tianyun that we have the fortune to eat this time. Let's go celebrate together. Let's go celebrate together." Chapter 1088. Under Elder Dong Yun's lead, they flew directly to Drunken Fanqing. Drunken Fanqing was not very far from the God Creation Palace. Through the teleportation formation, they only needed to teleport to 2 places to reach Drunken Fanqing. As the name suggested, Drunken Fanqing was actually a good place full of restaurants. There was good wine everywhere, and there was even delicious food to enjoy. Basically, many disciples could come here to relax after completing their missions or when they were worried. When they arrived, Yi Tianyun was indeed shocked by Drunken Fanqing's situation. Drunken Fanqing was filled with the rich fragrance of wine. Even he wondered if he had entered a wine pot. Otherwise, how could it be so fragrant and sweet? Although he did not enter a wine pot, it was almost the same as entering a wine pot. It was not the wine that brought such a rich fragrance, but the Drunken Fanqing trees here. The tree trunks seemed to be filled with wine. Otherwise, why would the fragrance be constantly drifting out? In reality, it was not that there was wine in the Drunken Fanqing trees, but that there was a lot of wine buried under the roots of the Drunken Fanqing trees. Every restaurant was surrounded by Drunken Fanqing trees, so they could not casually dig down. Otherwise, they would definitely be broken by the boss here. Through the Drunken Fanqing trees, they could not only add a rich and sweet taste to the wine, but they could also attract customers. We're here. Let's go to this Apricot Rain restaurant. Elder Dong Yun pointed. Apricot Rain restaurant. Elder Dong Yun, this is no longer as simple as bleeding, right? Senior brother High Dragon and the others exclaimed, in the past, when we joined, you were not so generous. Isn't this a little too biased? Ahem, this is not biased. You guys have been working hard all this time. Can't I reward everyone a little? Elder Dong Yun said while waiting for them. Hee, Elder Dong Yun is still the most generous. Then let's go and drink a few pots of wine. They all laughed and rushed to Apricot Rain restaurant. The atmosphere was very harmonious. Yi Tianyun smiled at the side and followed them in. This atmosphere was really good. These were the fellow disciples of the same sect. Little junior brother, you really can't tell? Senior sister Fire Lotus couldn't help but ask. Looking at senior sister Hulien's doubtful gaze, Yi Tianyun thought for a while before nodding and saying softly, I can see one thing. Senior sister Hulien's acting is a little bad. It's not natural enough. His voice was so soft that only the 2 of them could hear him. After hearing this, senior sister Hulien's beautiful eyes were filled with innocence. Is it really that bad? Can you tell so easily? This is a little exaggerated. It's fine for others, but I see more details. For example, it's clearly my mission for you to take the lead. Why did you take the lead? Moreover, you're even exchanging glances with the Flame Qilin. It's hard not to know. Yi Tianyun said helplessly, in the future, senior sister Hulian, you should make a detailed plan. That way, you can be foolproof. Senior sister Hulian suddenly laughed. Are you saying that I'm not natural enough in battle? You didn't find anything wrong with the others? That's right. There's just a little problem with the battle. Tianyun smiled. That's great. I'll improve in the future. Thank you for reminding me. I almost lost my confidence. Senior sister Huolian smiled happily and patted his shoulder. Speaking of which, you pushed me away and spoke so righteously. It's really attractive. If there's a chance, I'll introduce a sister to you. There's no need for that. Tianyun quickly waved his hand. There's no need for that. It's good to get to know each other. Senior sister Huolian smiled. Let's go drink. Seeing that she had relaxed, Tianyun shrugged. In fact, he had seen it from the beginning. However, seeing that senior sister Huolian was so conflicted, he must have said something. Otherwise, she would have gone crazy with her questions. The others saw that senior sister Huolian's mood suddenly became better. They did not know what was going on. Then, they entered the Apricot Rain restaurant. As soon as they entered, they saw that there were apricot trees everywhere. They looked yellow and beautiful. Some were even planted in the air. Dense apricots fell from the sky. It really looked like a rain of apricots. They did not expect that this kind of ordinary fruit would become a theme here. Elder Dong Yun is here. I haven't seen you in a long time. At this time, the owner walked over with a smile. It's been a long time. Give us a private room. Elder Dong Yun waved his hand. No problem. Please follow me. The owner led the way. As an elder, Elder Dong Yun naturally had to lead the way. The group followed. When they were about to enter the private room, they passed by a private room and heard a surprised voice. Isn't that Elder Dong Yun? Why are you so generous this time? Why did you invite so many people to drink? Everyone turned their heads to look, and what they saw was also an old man, slowly tasting the wine with the three of them. When he saw them, his eyes were filled with mockery, but more than that, there was disdain. Tianyun noticed that this person's clothes were similar to Elder Dong Yun's. This meant that he was also an elder. Of course, the Hall of Gods had more than one elder. However, the situation was very different. There were also internal conflicts. Every elder had a different management style. Elder Dong Yun liked to be united. The foundation could be a little weak, but the character had to be up to standard. So it's Elder Xiao Tian. I was wondering who it was. I'm generous and like to invite disciples from my side. Is there a problem? Elder Dong Yun laughed coldly. Not really. After all, the money is yours. How you waste it is your business. There's a human too. TSK, Elder Dong Yun is really regressing. You even accepted a human as a disciple. What does this look like? A garbage collection center? Elder Xiao Tian did not mince his words. He directly said that Elder Dong Yun specialized in collecting garbage. Everyone was instantly enraged. Among them, senior brother Yulong stood out and smiled faintly. Elder Xiao Tian, speaking of which, your disciple seemed to have lost like a dog in front of us. He was barking as he walked. Did he really think he was a stray dog? Elder Xiao Tian's face darkened. He waved his hand, and a few chopsticks pierced towards senior brother Yulong. They were quickly blocked by Elder Dong Yun. Elder Xiao Tian, what is the meaning of this? Elder Dong Yun said with a cold gaze. Nothing much. Elder Dong Yun, you should properly manage your disciples. When the elders are talking, the disciples should not interrupt. Don't you know this kind of etiquette? Elder Xiao Tian laughed coldly. Don't worry. We still know this kind of etiquette. However, the disciples I recruit are my own business. It has nothing to do with you. Elder Dong Yun said coldly. That's right. So what if we recruit any clans? They are all our juniors. Yes. They are all our juniors. Chapter 1089. It was rare for Tianyun to be so open. From the exchange of words with Elder Xiao Tian, he knew that this group of people was sincere. As long as they were determined, they would not change their minds. However, it was obvious that the two elders of the same deity palace had completely different ideas. One was biased towards recruiting geniuses, while the other focused on character. He originally thought that the deity palace would be a pure land, but it seemed like only Elder Dongyun had such an idea. Elder Dongyun had a different idea, and he was not as extreme as Elder Xiao Tian. There were more people like Elder Xiao Tian, and it was survival of the fittest. They had to choose the cream of the crop, not just the cream of the crop. Every single one of Elder East Cloud's disciples was outstanding, but they were still far from the level of super geniuses and elites. As for Elder Xiao Tian, he only recruited those with great potential and were considered elites. Elder Xiao Tian looked at them and smiled contemptuously. What a joke. In the entire deity palace, you have the fewest people. In the deity palace's trials, your rankings are quite low. This is because of Elder Dongyun's good leadership, or else you wouldn't have gotten such good results. Elder Dongyun's face turned green and white, and he did not look good. It was undeniable that Elder Xiao Tian was speaking the truth. Because he was too stubborn about character and unity, there were very few cultivators who passed. Some had amazing talent, but their character was not up to standard, so they were immediately eliminated. Those who were eliminated naturally joined other elders, which meant that their resources were continuously flowing in. On the other hand, Elder Dongyun had not had a single newcomer join for several years, or even hundreds of years. It was not that no one came to take the trial, but that no one passed every time. The contents of the trial were too insane for them. Most people who had cultivated to this level were more selfish in their hearts. Suddenly becoming tolerant and associating with the weak was something they couldn't do. As time went by, the result was that no one joined in. When Tianyun came, no one lined up, and that was the case. The transportation portal that he headed for led to the area managed by Elder Dongyun, so naturally, he met Elder Dongyun. As for the other paths, they would have to face different elders. In the long run, Elder East Cloud's reputation grew more and more ferocious. In the end, no one came to sign up. This was the most awkward part. Elder Dongyun's actions were clearly correct, but most cultivators did not want to be associated with weaklings. Or perhaps he didn't like this feeling of restraint. Everyone had their own thoughts. Tianyun liked this feeling. At least he wouldn't be stabbed. This is my matter. There is no need for Elder Xiao Tian to worry so much, Elder Dongyun said in a deep voice. Of course, that's your business. However, if the other shrines were to compete, it wouldn't just be your business, but the entire shrine of God's business. When the time comes, I wonder what the palace master will think if your people drag us down. Elder Xiao Tian sneered. Every divine palace had a palace master, who was mainly the existence of the entire divine palace. Usually, they wouldn't appear, and would be managed by many elders. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he wouldn't come out. I know what I'm doing. With that, Elder Dongyun admitted that he was in the wrong and led the disciples to the private room in front. When they sat down, Senior Brother High Dragon was extremely displeased. Elder Dongyun, that Elder Xiao Tian is too much. I'm not afraid of them at all. Even if it's a competition of geniuses, we have many here. Just Huo Yan and I alone are enough to suppress that bunch of idiots. All of them didn't even have the mood to drink anymore. They felt extremely sullen. No one liked to be slapped in the face, especially in front of their own elders. It was even more displeasing. So far, what he said is indeed the truth. If you want to retaliate against him, the best way is during the competition in the palace. All of you must fight hard for me. Elder Dongyun said through gritted teeth. He wanted to make a move, but fighting between elders was also not allowed. Private fights were not allowed. Especially two Sir God cultivation powerhouses. If they were to fight, drunken Fanqing would explode. I will definitely fight hard and beat them to death. What I hate the most are those high and mighty fellows who look down on everyone. I admit that my talent is lacking, but don't I work hard? I believe that sooner or later, I'll be able to catch up to that bunch of fellows. That's right, talent can't compare. But can they look down on us like this? If they have the capabilities, then don't cultivate. A bunch of arrogant and conceited fellows. Each and every one of them started drinking furiously. The wine that they drank did not have any taste at all, like cows chewing on peonies. Each and every one of them was filled with righteous indignation. Tianyun lightly drank the fine wine that was served, narrowing his eyes slightly, thinking about something. At this time, a wave of jubilant cheers came from downstairs and started to liven up, drawing their attention. As they looked down, a fighting arena was set up at no idea when. The Apricot Rain Inn was very spacious. Setting up a fighting arena was not a big problem. Welcome, everyone. Today is the same as in the past. There's a special program. As long as you all send people over to fight, if they win, drinks are all waived. Of course, those who aren't coming down to fight can just place a bet like in the past. The Apricot Rain Inn's manager stood on the fighting arena and explained the situation here to the numerous guests. The Apricot Rain Inn was a little special. In this world where martial arts reigned supreme, the word fighting was naturally indispensable. The Apricot Rain Inn set up the fighting arena here as well as special activities. If they won, they would receive a reward of waiving drinks. If they didn't like it, they could place a bet. It could be considered a small prize. This kind of livening program was pleasing to the eyes. Actually, it was basically just placing a bet. The banker was naturally the Apricot Rain Inn. It was undoubtedly more profitable to earn extra money from this place. This is our agent. Who's interested in challenging him? The manager pointed to the agent he sent up. His cultivation was rather strong, having reached the 6th level of the Lord of Heaven. Those who come up to challenge cannot have a cultivation that is too high. The highest cannot be higher than the 1st level. Otherwise, I'll lose my life. As for those with low cultivation, there's no need to worry. With their gazes shifted, the crowd's mood eased a little. They all looked down at the situation below the stage. Very soon, there would be a customer challenging them. This was a place where drinks were waived. How could they not give it a try? The drinks here were rather expensive. If they could drink for free, why not? Chapter 1090. Before the battle began, everyone began to place their bets. Everyone's bets were different, but they all had their bets. Some bet on the guest, some on the fighter. It all depended on their preferences. Let's place our bets. Who do you choose? I choose the guest. Choose the guest. I feel that the agent is slightly stronger, so it's possible that he will win. I feel that the guest is stronger. He's even stronger than the fighter. Senior brother High Dragon and the others were discussing who to bet on. They had some free time on their hands, and they were drinking now. How could they not liven things up? Not only them, even Elder Dong Yun began to place his bets. He wanted to earn as much as he could since he had nothing to do here. Soon, they all placed their bets. The waiter collected the bets and settled them when they left. Junior brother, which one do you favor? Senior sister Fire Lotus asked. I favor the fighter. His cultivation is lower than the guest's, but his foundation is stable. Especially his strength. He's definitely an existence that can crush his opponent. He doesn't need too much technique. He can defeat his opponent with just his strength. Tianyun analyzed simply. There was actually more detailed information, but he didn't say it out loud. If he said it out loud, it would definitely scare Senior Sister Fire Lotus. He could even see the opponent's martial arts, overall strength, and weaknesses. Wouldn't that be scary? With the appraisal eye, there was nothing he couldn't see through. Does that doja look very powerful? I feel that his aura is a bit weak. He doesn't seem to have enough explosive power. Someone interrupted. This is hiding his strength. If it's so easy to see through, why would the shopkeeper send someone up? He's not doing charity. He's here to win money and create a situation where he'll lose. Tianyun smiled faintly. His further analysis made everyone feel that it made sense. However, some still felt that the guest would win. Let me think about it. I'll still bet on the fighter. Me too. Let's listen to little junior brother. It sounds quite reasonable. I'm firm on my choice. I feel that the guest will win. I've seen the guest win before. Sometimes, I still make a mistake. Some people chose to believe in Tianyun, while others chose not to. Actually, it was not a big deal. They all believed in their own judgment and felt that their guess would not be wrong. Then, I will bet 1,000 star stones on doja. Tianyun spent a lot of money. He didn't spend too much, but he was just playing around. There was no need to spend so much. Soon, everyone finished placing their bets. Then, they began to fight crazily. In the beginning, the warrior was suppressed for a short while. Then, the warrior suddenly exploded and waved his arms wildly, ruthlessly throwing his opponent away and winning the match. That agent really won. That's really godly. That power is really hidden and exploding at the critical moment, catching the opponent off guard and throwing him out. Those who had placed their bets with Tianyun were all smiling, while those who had lost had bitter expressions on their faces. If there was no profit to be made, he would definitely have a bitter expression. Little junior brother, you've really guessed correctly. Senior sister Fire Lotus smiled and clapped her hands happily. She had listened to Tianyun and placed her bet on the warrior. Tianyun smiled knowingly. Unless the opponent admitted defeat on purpose, he would definitely not make a wrong judgment. Soon, it was the turn of the next batch. The warrior went down to rest. This time, senior sister Fire Lotus continued to ask, little junior brother, what about this round? Who do you think will win? Is it the warrior? I think the warrior is quite powerful. His cultivation is higher than his opponent's, and his equipment is also better. Everyone looked at Tianyun, waiting to see what he would say this time. Judging from his eyes, it was definitely the warrior who was powerful. As for the guest, he was just average. This time, the guest can win unless he admits defeat on purpose. Tianyun smiled. His cultivation is lower than the warrior's, but his foundation is there. I can still feel the aura of flames from him. It is very likely that he has the power of demonic fire. When used together, there will be unexpected effects. Amazing. Little junior brother, you can see that the opponent has demonic fire? Senior sister Fire Lotus covered her mouth in surprise. This is just a feeling. Whether it is accurate or not, that is another matter. Tianyun smiled. Okay, I will trust you this round. I will bet 5,000 star stones. Senior sister Fire Lotus bravely bet 5,000 star stones. This was not a lot, but it was definitely not a small amount. If they lost, it would be quite painful. Senior sister Fire Lotus, you are really bold. You trust little junior brothers so much. They all felt that it was very strange. It is okay. It sounds reasonable. Do you want to bet with me? Senior sister Fire Lotus smiled. Let's try. I will listen to little junior brother. I will pass. It seems that the warrior is a bit stronger. I will choose the warrior. Some of them continued to choose with Tianyun, while others chose the warrior. Their choices were still different. Soon, the match started again. Tianyun's judgment was not wrong at all. The guest used demonic fire and martial arts to easily defeat the opponent. There was no difficulty at all. It was a complete victory. God, It is true. Little junior brother, you are really amazing. Your foresight is really better than ours. I won less. If only I bet more. They were both happy and worried. They did not expect that Yi Tianyun's judgment would be correct twice in a row. It was really shocking. If it was a blind guess, there would be a 50-50 chance. However, Yi Tianyun's analysis was very accurate. He knew what trump card the opponent could use. That was another matter. Little junior brother, I've earned again. It's all thanks to you that I can earn so much. Senior sister Huo Yan smiled until her eyes turned into slits. This is all your choice. It has nothing to do with me. I was just saying casually. Don't blame me if you lose. Yi Tianyun smiled. Then, it was the third match. All of them looked at Yi Tianyun, hoping that he could give an accurate answer. 2 consecutive wins. How could they not look forward to it? From what I see, the guest has a higher chance. Buy the guest. Buy. If you don't buy, you are not a disciple of the Temple of Gods. That's right. I will buy the guest. I will bet 5,000 star stones. Before Yi Tianyun finished speaking, the people behind him had already placed their bets in a frenzy. Other than a few who did not buy, most of them chose to buy. Chapter 1091. Up until now, no one had ever heard of the shopkeeper deliberately arranging for them to lose, so no one was worried about this. If they were discovered, the apricot rain house would be scolded to death. That wasn't a problem. The most important thing was whether he could make an accurate judgment. Only by pointing out the good points could he have a higher chance of winning. If Yi Tianyun could point out the opponent's good points, they believed him even more. That prompted them to place their bets. They believed in his choice and treated him as a godly diviner. Soon, the third round was decided. Yi Tianyun's choice won. The result shocked them again. They didn't believe it before, but now they did. If the first and second times were coincidences, what about the third time? The third time was no longer a coincidence. The key was that he had pointed out the opponent's good points. It couldn't be a coincidence. That's great. We won again. If I had known, I would have placed a bigger bet. I would have earned more. Yeah, but it's okay. We can continue to bet. As long as little junior says it, we will place a bigger bet. It's a pity that the upper limit is 10,000 star stones. Otherwise, I would have bet more. They didn't just have a few star stones. Some had hundreds of thousands of star stones. But the upper limit was 10,000. If it was too high, the apricot rain house wouldn't be able to afford it. Although they were confident in the people they sent, it didn't mean they were absolutely confident. They were in the heavenly spring divine territory. There were so many geniuses. If a heaven-defying genius appeared and someone else bet tens of millions of star stones, the apricot rain house would lose everything. The upper limit of 10,000 star stones was a good number. It wasn't high or low. To put it bluntly, it was just a simple entertainment. They couldn't lose too much. Of course, if too many people placed bets on the agent, the manager would make the agent lose. Otherwise, he would lose a lot of money. They just had to pretend. This time, the two are evenly matched. Their abilities are about the same. I can't estimate it. Yi Tianyun spread his hands helplessly. Their abilities were about the same. If they fought, they could only rely on their experience to win. Yi Tianyun could tell. Their abilities were about the same. The appraisal I couldn't tell. Evenly matched, all of them looked disappointed, which made things even more awkward. If they were evenly matched, even an elder wouldn't be able to tell. One could see his experience and various other aspects of ability, but who could see his combat experience? Soon after, they could only place a bet and treat it as a casual bet. Soon, the result was out again. It was Doja's victory. The two of them were indeed evenly matched, and Doja had almost lost. It just so happened to verify Yi Tianyun's words. The two of them were evenly matched. It was hard to say. What about this round? Who will win? They looked at Yi Tianyun expectantly, wanting to hear what Yi Tianyun had to say. I think the agent will win. The guest's cultivation is still one level higher, but this agent is stronger. It looked very ordinary, but it was a speed martial art. Under the rule of speed, he will be able to win this round. Yi Tianyun quickly deduced. Well said. Speed is the only thing that can't be defeated. Then I'll bet on him. 10,000 star stones. Me too. I'll bet 10,000 star stones. They all fought to place their bets, which really scared Yi Tianyun. You guys are making things very difficult for me. If I lose, won't I have to take the blame? Yi Tianyun felt very helpless. After all, this wasn't a small amount. It's okay. If we really lose, we won't blame you. Anyway, you let us earn quite a lot before. At most, we'll just lose it back. That's right. We chose it ourselves. Who can say for sure? They all smiled. Even if they really lost, it could only be said that it was a little more unexpected. I said that the guest will win. At this moment, Elder Xiao Tian walked out, his gaze sharp. I didn't expect Elder Dong Yun to have such a blind disciple. This round is clearly the guest's win. You don't even know who this guest is. He is a great genius of the Spear Palace. His spear art is like a shadow. Who can dodge his ultimate spear art? What kind of speed can dodge his spear art? His three disciples also walked out. The wooden tokens in their hands represented that the person they bet on was the guest. A genius of the Spear Palace? I remember now. He is the Shadow Lord of Heaven of the Spear Palace. His spear art is indeed impressive. One of them suddenly remembered the identity of this person, causing everyone's expression to change. From this, it could be seen that this person was quite famous. On the other hand, that Doja wasn't so famous. It could even be said that he was unknown. Who cares who he is? I believe in little junior brother's judgment. That Doja will win. That's right. Doja will win. What Spear Palace genius? Can't the person invited by the shopkeeper be a genius? That's right. Doja will definitely win. What blind eyes? I think you are the real blind one. None of them changed their expressions. Instead, they all supported Yi Tianyun's judgment. When facing an enemy, they had to stand on the same side. Elder Xiao Tian, how we choose is our business, right? Elder Dong Yun said indifferently. Of course it's your business. It's just that you have placed all your hopes in the hands of a human. It's really funny, and you have even thrown 10,000 star stones at each of them, Elder Xiao Tian said indifferently. Just watch. That Shadow Lord of Heaven is the true winner. Elder Xiao Tian had such confidence because he naturally knew the background of this Shadow Lord of Heaven. Otherwise, how could he have such confidence? Yi Tianyun didn't say anything. He couldn't be bothered to refute. He had observed this Shadow Lord of Heaven before. His abilities were indeed not bad. However, from a comprehensive point of view, he was naturally inferior to that Doja. Very soon, the battle began. The Shadow Lord of Heaven's spear was indeed like a dragon. Every spear strike was accompanied by a shadow. It was as if the shadow was entangled. However, the Doja was even more domineering. The long sword in his hand flickered with a bright light. Most people couldn't see it, and it had already slashed the Shadow Lord of Heaven. Following that, he displayed an even more magnificent sword technique. It was so dazzling that they couldn't see it clearly. This speed was really too fast. They had never seen a sword technique of this level reach a level that even they couldn't see. In the blink of an eye, it was unknown how many tens of thousands of swords had been stabbed out. The Shadow Lord of Heaven was forced back again and again. Finally, under the piercing of a sword, the Shadow Lord of Heaven was sent flying. Complete defeat, a complete and utter defeat. They didn't expect that the great genius of the Spear Palace would be so easily defeated. He was beaten to the point that he couldn't even fight back. It was really as Tianyun had said. Only speed could not be defeated. It was an existence that could crush others. Chapter 1092. Elder Xiao Tian's face was not swollen, but the crowd felt that his face was really swollen. Just a moment ago, he was so sure that the agent would lose. With the genius of the Spear Palace, the opponent would definitely lose. Now, he was slapped in the face very hard. He did not know who was blind, but he was the one who was blind. He could not see it. Tianyun had exposed the real situation. Elder Xiao Tian was so embarrassed that he wanted to die. That's great. That agent really won. That sword technique was too fast. I could barely see it. Is there such a person in our Heavenly Spring Divine Realm? That's right. It's the first time I've seen such a fast attack. He looks very unfamiliar. If he had such amazing sword techniques, he would be very famous. No matter what, we won. 10,000 star stones. Now it's doubled to 20,000 star stones. We really earned big. All of them cheered. But most of them wanted to see Elder Xiao Tian make a fool of himself. Elder Dong Yun naturally would not let go of this chance. He smiled at Elder Xiao Tian. TSK, Elder Xiao Tian, your eyes are really good. What Spear Palace will win? Now. A dozen of us earned more than 100,000 star stones in one go. Although it's not a lot, it's entertainment. It's good to win. Elder Xiao Tian glared at them, and even more at Tianyun. He did not expect to make a fool of himself. He did not know how to retort. Who asked him to be so full of himself? He could not change the situation no matter what. Hey, isn't that the new super genius of Sword Palace, Sword Rain Lord of Heaven? I didn't expect the shopkeeper to come and be a fighter. A new member. No wonder I have never seen him before. So he's the new genius of Sword Palace. Rumor has it that he's the #1 sword genius of Sword Palace in 1,000 years. The audience below immediately began to discuss, and only then did the people above know the origins of the agents. The #1 sword genius of Sword Palace in 1,000 years. Compared to Shadow Lord of Heaven, he was naturally much stronger. The Shadow-like Lord of Heaven was at most ranked above average in the Spear Palace, but the Sword Rain Lord of Heaven was the #1 swordsmanship genius in 1,000 years. The abilities he displayed far surpassed the Shadow-like Lord of Heaven. When Elder Xiao Tian heard this, his face turned green and white. This was because he was not well informed enough. If he had known, he definitely wouldn't have said such a thing. In the end, he was blind. Little junior brother, you're really too amazing. You even saw through this. You're really our lucky star. You've just joined, and you've already made us a fortune. Yes, yes. We all suspect that you're from the Heavenly Trigram sect. Only the Heavenly Trigram sect can deduce that. Heavenly Trigram Gate? It can't be, right? If he was from the Heavenly Trigram sect, would he join the Heavenly Spring Divine Realm? They all looked at Tianyun, waiting for Tianyun's answer. Heavenly Trigram Gate? I'm not from the Heavenly Trigram sect. I was just casually guessing. It's just luck. Tianyun was humble. The Heavenly Trigram sect they were talking about was actually a hidden faction. It wasn't considered a God Realm faction. It was just an extremely secretive sect. It was said that even third-grade factions didn't dare to provoke them. He guessed 4 rounds correctly. No one would believe it if he said it was luck. They all laughed. They felt that this new junior brother was more and more pleasing to the eye. A human, and the Heavenly Trigram sect will accept him, That's just daydreaming. Elder Xiao Tian said coldly, since you're so accurate, Elder East Cloud, why don't we go down and have a spar? Let's see if we're right. He was really angry and wanted to get back some face from Elder East Cloud. Let's have a spar. Do you think we're afraid of you? Senior Brother High Dragon and the rest had wanted to do this long ago. They kept saying that they only accepted trash. Then, let's have a spar to see who was the real trash. Elder East Cloud did not even open his mouth, and they were already fighting to have a spar. Yi Tianyun looked over. The three people that Elder Xiao Tian brought over also had a feeling of eagerness to give it a try. The cultivation of the three of them were not low. They were all at the 5th level of the Lord of Heaven or above. They were considered to be relatively strong. The disciples that Elder Xiao Tian invited over to drink would definitely not be simple. If they were too ordinary, it would really be a slap in the face. Elder Xiao Tian, since you want to have a spar, that's no problem. How do you want to spar? Elder East Cloud naturally would not admit defeat. He felt that there was no lack of geniuses on his side. They would not be the slightest bit inferior to the other side. Of course it's to go down and have a spar. We'll send out one person, and you guys will be sent out by that kid. Don't you guys believe in his judgment? Then let him choose. How about it? Elder Xiao Tian looked at Yi Tianyun. He wanted to get back some face in disguise. However, going against a junior was really not the bearing of an elder. Elder Xiao Tian really did not have any bearing to speak of. No matter who the opponent was, getting back some face was the most important thing. Everyone looked at each other. They did not think that there would be such a move. Elder East Cloud did not think too much and said, no problem. Let him choose. I have no objections. Since he is my disciple, I should believe in my disciple's choice. Senior Brother High Dragon and the others also nodded. They smiled at Yi Tianyun and said, little junior brother's judgment is so accurate. I'll let you choose. Yi Tianyun smiled slightly. Elder Xiao Tian really knew how to make things difficult for others. He was really small-minded. No problem. Since senior brothers believe in me, then I'll choose. Yi Tianyun looked at Elder Xiao Tian and said, how does this work? 1 round to determine the winner. Of course it's not 1 round to determine the winner. It'll be best of 3 rounds. How about it? Elder Xiao Tian smiled and said, otherwise, in order to avoid being bullied by us, I'll give you guys more chances. Of course, I believe that you guys will only send Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven or Fiery Lotus Lord of Heaven. Who else can you send? Elder Xiao Tian laughed out loud. At a glance, only Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven and Fiery Lotus Lord of Heaven could see. The others could only stay at the side as spectators. Oh, I don't think so. Don't worry. I don't need to send Senior Brother High Dragon or Fiery Lotus to deal with your disciple. If I send one of them, it'll be my loss. Yi Tianyun pointed at his own eyes and said, I should say that my eyesight is not good and I made a mistake. How about that? Yi Tianyun's words greatly shocked them. Although they were very unhappy with Elder Xiao Tian's words, the strongest among them were Imperial Dragon and Fiery Lotus. If they did not send the 2, how could they win? Ha ha ha, what a joke. You said it yourself, Elder East Cloud. Didn't you just say that he'll be in charge of the selection? Elder Xiao Tian laughed so hard that he was about to cry. How could the disciple he had brought be ordinary? In his opinion, if it wasn't Imperial Dragon and Fiery Lotus, it would be impossible to deal with them. Yes, he'll be the one to choose. Elder Dong Yun was not the least bit displeased with Yi Tianyun's words. After so many rounds, he believed that Yi Tianyun was absolutely confident. Since he said it, there would be no problem. Chapter 1093. Elder Dong Yun's confidence made Yi Tianyun feel good. What he wanted was this sense of trust. If there was no trust at all, then there was no need to talk about mutual trust. Thank you for your trust, Elder Dong Yun. Tianyun said gratefully. I said I trust you, and that means I trust you. I'm not the kind of person who goes back on his word, especially someone with a big mouth and arrogance. Elder Dong Yun's words had a hidden meaning, and it was obviously targeted at Elder Xiao Tian. Elder Xiao Tian was exasperated, and he said with a livid face, then I'll send out the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven. Who will you send? Just like what you said, we can't send out the Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven or the Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven. He wanted to see the other party make a fool of himself. Not sending out the Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven and the Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven was simply courting death. To him, this was no different from giving away their lives. All this while, only the two of them had some ability, and the rest were nothing special. The Golden Jade Lord of Heaven, huh? Tianyun looked at him and smiled. Then we'll send out Senior Brother Phoenix Feather. Senior Brother Phoenix Feather is up for this round. The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven walked out with a serious expression, but in reality, he didn't have much confidence. He just didn't want to be at a disadvantage in front of Elder Xiao Tian again, and he couldn't make a fool of himself. Everyone else was shocked. They didn't expect Tianyun to send out the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven. The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven's standard wasn't very high, and he could only be considered average. As for the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven, his standard wasn't low, and he could even be said to be on the same level as the Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven. Elder Xiao Tian wouldn't bring out a weak disciple, and he could even be said to be very strong. The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven, huh? The Golden Jade Lord of Heaven's eyes were filled with disdain. The opponent was a level weaker than him, so the result was even less suspense. Alright, can we go down now? Elder Xiao Tian couldn't wait to see the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven cripple the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven. Wait, I have something to discuss with Senior Brother Phoenix Feather. You guys can send someone down first. Tianyun indicated. Alright. Elder Xiao Tian gestured for Heavenly Monarch Gold Jade to go down first. As he did, Elder Xiao Tian sent a voice transmission, be more ruthless and cripple him. There's no need to Tian, but cripple of Tian is. Elder Xiao Tian, this disciple has the same intention. Heavenly Monarch Golden Jade smiled coldly. He already had this thought for a long time. Since it was a fight, it definitely wouldn't end so easily. If there weren't any problems, it wouldn't be interesting at all. Tianyun and the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven communicated something. After a while, the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven's face was filled with doubt, and he seemed to find Tianyun's words strange. I understand. The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven nodded. Senior Brother Phoenix Feather, I'll leave it to you. Tianyun smiled. No problem. The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven was full of confidence, and he walked down the stairs. At this moment, the people below were already prepared. When the manager saw that there were people who wanted to fight, he welcomed them to go up. The next program will be the fight between the guests. Everyone can also bet. The manager immediately announced to let people bet. Little junior brother, what did you say to Phoenix Feather? They asked curiously. Cough cough. Actually, I didn't say much. You guys will see it later. Tianyun smiled faintly, but he didn't say what it was. After fiercely selling suspense, everyone continued to watch with doubt. It seemed that the difference in strength between the two of them was still quite big. Why did Tianyun dare to let the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven go up? There was someone stronger than the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven here, but he didn't choose, and he just had to choose him. As for what exactly would happen, they would have to see the final result. For their own people, they didn't hesitate to bet on the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven. Everyone bet 10,000 star stones, and they didn't hesitate at all. For their own people, they would definitely strongly support them. The star stones felt like they were free, and they continued to bet. After Elder Xiao Tian saw this, he sneered, truly a foolish person with a lot of money. Even if they believe in their own people, they wouldn't be so brainless to believe. They naturally believed that they would definitely win. It should be said that when Tianyun said that he wouldn't send out the Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven and the Fiery Lotus Lord of Heaven, they believed that they would definitely win. Very soon, the battle started. The Golden Jade Lord of Heaven held a golden long sword in his hand, and the golden light was quite dazzling. This was a golden sword that he had personally forged, and it was definitely compatible with his elemental power. It could erupt with the strongest power. Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven, if I attack too heavily, then don't blame me. If you want to blame someone, blame your little junior brother. As soon as he finished speaking, the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven had already flown over. The golden sword in his hand shone brightly, and it was as if the Buddha's light had enveloped him, and his whole body flickered with golden light. It looked as if the Buddha's light had shone, and it had enveloped this piece of land, causing all the evildoers to have nowhere to hide. The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven similarly took out the flower feather long sword that he had forged, and he flew over, intending to confront the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven head-on. When everyone saw this scene, they shook their heads one after another. This was undoubtedly the most unwise choice, and it was equivalent to dragging himself into the water instead. The Golden Jade Lord of Heaven's ability had always been stronger than his. If he were to confront it head-on, he would undoubtedly be at a disadvantage. Now that he was confronting it head-on, wasn't he courting death? Ha, is this what you call your eyesight? Elder Xiao Tian laughed out loud, and he felt that Tianyun was very ridiculous. Was it his plan to let the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven confront him head-on? Tianyun could not be bothered with him, and the corners of his lips curled into a smile. Everything was within his control, and there was no need for him to worry about anything. At the same time, when the two of them were about to collide, the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven's attack suddenly turned downward, and it actually ignored his opponent's attack. It directly swung its sword at the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven. Countless flying feathers pierced through the long sword, and it was like a dense sword rain that pierced through continuously. You think this rubbish sword rain can break through my defense? You're courting death. The Golden Jade Lord of Heaven waved its long sword rapidly, and it broke through the sword rain. However, there was too much sword rain, and it was impossible for it to block all of them. Following that, a small portion of the sword rain pierced through, and then fiercely hit the body of the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven. There were many parts of the body that were hit, and there was no problem at all. When one part of the sword rain hit the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven, the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven's expression changed, and the originally fierce attack suddenly disappeared. What replaced it was the disappearance of the star power, and the attack dissipated. The overbearing attack suddenly dissipated, and no one knew what had happened, including the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven. He did not know what he had done. However, the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven did not stop, and it wanted to take advantage of his weakness to take his life. It continued to display countless flying feathers, and they continuously pierced through the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven. At this time, the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven covered its abdomen, which had been bleeding for some time, and it was obvious that it was a wound caused by the flying feathers. Its face was pale, and it waved its sword with one hand to block, but its momentum was weaker than before, and its star power could not be sustained. Chapter 1094. Despicable. The Golden Jade Lord of Heaven covered his waist and kept waving his arms to block the feathers, but his strength was getting weaker and weaker. The wound on his abdomen was like a dam that was releasing astral power. He couldn't accumulate any energy to attack. The Phoenix Lord of Heaven kept pushing him back. He couldn't fight back at all. Theoretically, he should be able to stop the bleeding even if he was injured or ignore the wound and could still fight. However, the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven seemed to have withered. He couldn't fight back at all and could only keep moving back. If this went on, he would lose for sure. Damn it! What's going on? When Elder Xiao Tian saw his disciple being forced back again and again, he roared, "Don't care about that wound, fight him." He didn't want to lose this round. He just wanted to win 2 out of 3 rounds. He needed to win both rounds, not lose one. What he wanted was complete perfection, not a scar. The Golden Jade Lord of Heaven was pushed back. He wanted to fight back, but he couldn't control himself and kept moving back. Very quickly, he was sent flying by the Phoenix Feather Heaven Monarch's ferocious attacks. After he fell to the ground, he coughed up blood. Especially the abdomen area, which kept bleeding. More importantly, he could feel the astral power flowing out. He had seen blood before, but he had never seen the power of a meteor. Everyone was shocked. They didn't expect the Phoenix Lord of Heaven to win just like that. Let alone the others, even the Phoenix Feather Heaven Monarch herself was dumbfounded. Who would have thought that she would succeed so easily? How could he not be shocked when he defeated an opponent who was stronger than him so easily? Damn it! Elder Shao Tian cursed and quickly flew down to the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven. He checked and said in shock, his inner world is damaged. Astral power is flowing out. As a genius, he must have an inner world and it should be quite complete. The inner world was very important. If it was broken, it would be very destructive. That was exactly what happened. His inner world was broken and it was a mess inside. Under such circumstances, not to mention fighting, it would be good if they could hold on and not explode. You're so ruthless. You actually broke my disciple's inner world. Elder Shao Tian was like a dog as he began to bark wildly. Elder Shao Tian, what is the meaning of this? We all saw the fight just now. I didn't see my disciple being too heavy-handed. It was all normal attacks, and he didn't even try to kill his opponent. There's something wrong with him. He actually dared to slander my disciple. Elder East Cloud also flew down, his expression furious. Not to mention Elder East Cloud, everyone could see this. The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven didn't do anything. It was just a very normal attack. It just happened to break through the opponent's defense, and then it became like this. Such irregular attacks just happened to break through. Everything was so coincidental. This was at most an accidental injury. How could it be said that it was intentional? Is this your doing? Elder Shao Tian stared at Yi Tianyun. Everyone was chosen by Yi Tianyun. Other than him, who else could it be? What could I be doing? I was just up there, and then I simply sent out Senior Brother Phoenix Feather. Is there a problem? Yi Tianyun shrugged helplessly. At this time, everyone remembered that the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven was sent down by him. He really succeeded in defeating the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven. Not only did he defeat, but it could be said to be a complete victory. He directly crushed the opponent. Although it wasn't a perfect victory, at least he won. The process wasn't important. What was important was the result. Elder Shao Tian gritted his teeth. He was just casually saying it. How could he slander him? Moreover, it was his own problem. He couldn't blame others. Then, Elder Shao Tian brought people down to treat their injuries. The inner world was damaged, and it needed to be quickly repaired. Otherwise, if the foundation was damaged, there would be repercussions. When the fight temporarily stopped, everyone came to watch. They were all amazed by Yi Tianyun's judgment. He really succeeded in defeating the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven. This is too inconceivable. When I first chose the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven, I was worried. Now it seems that I was worried for nothing. That's right. Who would have thought it would be so easy? It was so easy. The opponent didn't even touch the surface of the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven. Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven, what did little junior brother say to you previously? The most important thing had come. Previously, Yi Tianyun had whispered something to him. They were very curious. Now, they could finally get the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven to say it and resolve the doubts in their hearts. Little junior brother didn't say anything to me. He just told me to attack with all my strength and use whatever moves I usually use. However, I need to face him head-on. Don't be afraid. Attack him head-on. The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven said helplessly. That's simple. Everyone was shocked. That's simple. The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven spread his hands and said, I wasn't confident at that time. Anyway, I listened to little junior brother and used my usual attacks. My attacks couldn't even withstand a single blow from the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven. However, a few of my attacks still hit him. They shouldn't have caused any damage to him, but they still easily broke his defense. Little junior brother must have said that because he saw something wrong with the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven, the Dragon Lord of Heaven said with a smile. Everyone looked at Yi Tianyun, wanting to get an explanation from him. That's about right. I saw that his body was a bit strange and his astral power wasn't stable enough. Therefore, I speculated that he must have been injured during his recent cultivation. He could have easily broken his defense with just a slight attack, Yi Tianyun explained. He had easily found the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven's biggest weakness through the appraisal eye. He didn't need to use too much power. He just needed to hit him. But why didn't you just attack the weakness? Someone immediately asked. If I said it and did things too deliberately, the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven would be on guard. As long as we guard against that weakness, we won't have a high chance of winning. Yi Tianyun smiled. Everything was within his expectations. After hearing his explanation, everyone finally knew what was going on. It was all part of his plan. If he had told the Phoenix Lord of Heaven that he had targeted the opponent's weakness right from the start, wouldn't he be telling the opponent that he was going to attack the opponent's weakness? That's amazing. You saw it. We couldn't tell at all. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, but they were still shocked by Yi Tianyun's observation. Even Elder Shao Tian didn't know about it, but Yi Futian noticed it. It was unbelievable. Yi Tianyun smiled. Everything would be easy as long as he knew the opponent's weakness. Therefore, there was no need to send the powerful Dragon Lord of Heaven. It would be enough to deal with him. Very soon, Elder Shao Tian returned with a pale face. He said in a deep voice, I'll send Shan Yen Lord of Heaven for the next round. Who will you send? Chapter 1095. Everyone looked at Yi Tianyun, wanting to see who he would choose this time. They all looked at each other. There were so many people, who would they choose? The opponent was the Mountain Lord of Heaven, a rock. Whether it was defense or strength, he was a relatively strong existence. With one punch, he would be easily destroyed. There were very few people present who could compare to the Mountain Lord of Heaven, unless the Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven or the Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven went up. But they couldn't send the two of them up. This was awkward. They wanted to see who Yi Tianyun would choose this time. Such a troublesome opponent, could it be that he also had a weakness? Or did he have some other strength that could be used to attack him? Hurry up and choose. If you want to find any problems with the Mountain Lord of Heaven, then save yourself the trouble. His body is strong, there won't be any problems. Elder Shao Tian sneered. This time, he had asked the Mountain Lord of Heaven thoroughly. He didn't want the situation with the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven to happen again. If they lost again, then they would completely lose. Now, everyone looked at each other. Was there really no other way? Didn't I choose long ago? The next one to go up will be me. Yi Tianyun walked out and looked at Elder Shao Tian sharply. You're going up. Elder Shao Tian was shocked. No matter how they thought, they didn't think that Yi Tianyun would go up personally. This was way beyond their expectations. How strong was Yi Tianyun? He was only a 7th-tier Earth Monarch. He could have broken through to the 8th-tier Earth Monarch, but he wasn't in a hurry. Recently, there were a lot of things to do, so he could only delay it. He didn't break through immediately. Therefore, in the eyes of others, he was at most a 7th-tier Earth Monarch. This cultivation against a 5th-stage Heaven Monarch. Wasn't this courting death? That's right, I'm going up. Is there a problem? Tianyun said calmly, this doesn't seem to be against the rules, right? Of course it's not against the rules, but are you sure you want to do this? Elder Xiao Tian suspected that Tianyun had gone mad. There was such a huge gap between their cultivations, yet he still chose to take the field himself. Elder Xiao Tian suspected that he had gone crazy. I'm sure I will, Tianyun said calmly. All right. Elder Xiao Tian looked at Elder East Cloud and said, Elder East Cloud, I didn't do it on purpose. He chose it himself. It has nothing to do with me. Elder East Cloud and the others were all shocked. Who would have thought that Tianyun would personally go into battle? With such a huge difference in cultivation, it was easy for problems to arise. We believe in junior brother. Since this is his choice, we have nothing to say. Senior sister Huo Yan and the others nodded. They didn't try to persuade Tianyun not to do so. Even senior sister Huo Yan laughed because she remembered something. During the examination, even the flame Qilin was sent flying by him. This was enough to show that his strength was quite domineering. She didn't know how much potential Tianyun had yet to unleash, but his strength definitely wouldn't be weak. Since he could make this request, then he definitely had a chance of winning. Otherwise, why would Tianyun bring it up? Yes, I respect my disciple's choice. Elder East Cloud also said. Elder Xiao Tian was shocked. He thought that Elder Xiao Tian would try to dissuade him. Who knew that it would be so pointless and really let Tianyun take the field himself? Very well. Since you're so bold, then let me see how strong you are. Elder Xiao Tian glanced at the mountain rock Heavenly Lord and sent a voice transmission, you must beat this kid to death. Don't show any mercy. Also, you must be more vigilant. I don't know what that kid is thinking. Go all out if you can. Elder Xiao Tian, you're too nervous. This kid's cultivation is so low. At most, he has some tricks up his sleeve. In the face of absolute power, these tricks are all trash. Lord of Heaven was full of confidence in himself. His opponent was so far away from him. If he couldn't even win this, he might as well commit suicide. Since you're so confident, then I'll leave it to you. If you lose. Elder Xiao Tian's eyes were cold. He didn't even need to finish his sentence to know what he was trying to say. Lord of Heaven nodded forcefully. He knew that he couldn't lose. Elder Xiao Tian cared a lot about his face. He already looked down on Elder East Cloud. If he lost to Elder East Cloud's disciple, where would he put his face? Soon after, they all went up. When they stood on the stage, they all exploded. With such a huge disparity in cultivation, he still sent his disciple up. Wasn't he just giving away money? Ahem, I won't place a bet this time. The situation is a bit special. If the disparity is too great, then it can't be considered a bet. The shopkeeper's words disappointed many customers who wanted to place a bet. Originally, they could have just closed their eyes and placed their bets on Lord of Heaven. They didn't need to choose anything else. Who knew that he wouldn't place a bet? It was really disappointing. The shopkeeper wasn't an idiot. With such a huge disparity in cultivation, if he still placed a bet, wouldn't he suffer a huge loss? He didn't want to suffer such a loss. After all, opening a restaurant wasn't for charity. It was to earn money. It seems like the shopkeeper is taking care of you. If you bet all at once again, you'll suffer a huge loss. Elder Xiao Tian didn't forget to give them a cold shoulder. Our little junior brother won't lose. That's right. Don't think that Lord of Heaven can win. Our little junior brother is even more powerful. They all had full confidence in Tianyun. After experiencing all this, they had a deeper understanding of Tianyun. They felt that he was unfathomable and was definitely a powerful cultivator. Powerful? Are you kidding me? Elder Xiao Tian shook his head. With such a huge disparity in cultivation, what can a human do? If it were any other race, I would still think that they have a chance. But a human, humph. While they were talking, Tianyun and Lord of Heaven had already started fighting. Lord of Heaven was bare-handed. It wasn't that he didn't have a weapon, but his fists were more powerful. His body didn't seem to have any bright spots, but when he swung his huge fists down, it was like a huge mountain pressing down. I'd like to see what tricks you have up your sleeves. Lord of Heaven faced the attack head-on. At the same time, he stared at Tianyun and didn't relax at all. He wanted to see what tricks Tianyun had up his sleeves, such as sneak attacks from the side or some other tricks. Unexpectedly, Tianyun didn't move at all. When he smashed over, Tianyun swung his fist at the same time. Fist against fist. There weren't any tricks. It was a very simple and violent fist against fist. Is he an idiot? Fist against fist, I'm dying of laughter. Fighting fist against Lord of Heaven, this is his ability. Chapter 1096. Rocky Lord of Heaven and Tianyun's fists collided. In the end, Rocky Lord of Heaven was sent flying. This result was unbelievable. Rocky Lord of Heaven was from the giant rock tribe. Most importantly, his cultivation was higher than Tianyun's. Who knew that he would still be crushed? This was unbelievable. Rocky Lord of Heaven was sent flying. The thick rock on his arm started to crack. It was obviously shattered by Tianyun's overbearing fist. On the other hand, there was nothing wrong with Tianyun's fist. Apart from taking a few steps back, he was fine. It's really tough. Tianyun smiled. He activated the dragon god bloodline in his body and circulated it in his body. In terms of strength, he would never lose to anyone. Rocky Lord of Heaven's cultivation was higher than his. But when had he ever been afraid of anyone? From the appraisal eye, he could see that Rocky Lord of Heaven was not as scary as he had imagined. Especially as his cultivation increased and he absorbed more astral energy from the heavenly tribulation, his physique was greatly strengthened. Even Rocky Lord of Heaven might not be a match for him. What? Rocky Lord of Heaven quickly stopped. He felt the pain on his fist. It was unbelievable. He thought that Tianyun would use some tricks. But now, it seemed that there was no trick at all. Tianyun had fought him head-on. Most importantly, he had lost. While he was stunned, Tianyun suddenly stepped on the ground and rushed towards him like a Tyrannosaurus rex. Tianyun's whole body's power was at its maximum, especially his dragon god bloodline. The effects of his equipment were also activated to the maximum. If not for this, he would not have been able to fight someone of a higher cultivation. After all, his opponent's cultivation was much higher than his. If he did not have other comprehensive strengths, he would not be able to deal with him. What are you waiting for? Tianyun swung his leg and lashed out fiercely. Mountain Lord of Heaven quickly raised his arm to block. Boom! The mountain rock heavenly monarch was sent retreating by the kick. The hard rock wall on the surface of his body immediately caved in, and dense cracks appeared on his arm. Even the powerful defense of the Lord of Heaven could not easily withstand the violent power. This scene shocked everyone. Most of them thought that Tianyun would use some kind of trick or maneuver to trick the Lord of Heaven. Now, it seemed that they had been too naive. Tianyun did not need to do that at all. He had just used his most violent strength to smash the mountain rock, the Lord of Heaven. This kid's strength is so strong. He's a human. Even Elder East Cloud and the others were shocked. Although they knew that Tianyun's strength was not weak, they did not expect him to suppress the Lord of Heaven in such a dominating manner. While they were still in shock, Tianyun did not give his opponent a chance to catch his breath. He continued to attack ferociously. He did not use any special moves. He simply used his fists to smash. Don't be arrogant. The Lord of Heaven was also angry. The cracks on his body began to repair rapidly. Soon, a thick rock wall was built on the surface of his body. His strength began to rise rapidly. He completely released the power of the Lord of Heaven. Heaven-shaking art. Heaven-shaking art. Tianyun instantly turned into an extremely heavy body. At the same time, he used the heaven-shaking art. He increased his fighting strength by 10 times. The power of the planets in his body began to circulate wildly. His body, which did not look very big, was like a huge planet. He charged towards the Lord of Heaven. Boom! The two of them collided, and with a loud bang, the mountain rock heavenly monarch was sent flying. The thick rocks on his body were smashed into pieces. On the other hand, Tianyun was completely fine. He did not even have a scratch on his body. Tianyun was wearing the evil devil godly suit. His defense was so strong. Naturally, he was not afraid of the Lord of Heaven. On the surface, it looked like ordinary clothes. In reality, it was the evil devil godly suit. How could its defense be weak? However, when they collided, they still felt that the other party was quite hard. The Lord of Heaven was not a pushover. His body was also very strong. It was already shocking that he was injured by Tianyun. The giant rock tribe had always had a strong defense. It was a great humiliation to be hit by a human. Mountain rock, use your weapon. Why are you using your fists? Use your weapon. Elder Shao Tian, who was below the stage, shouted hurriedly. The Lord of Heaven definitely had a weapon that he could use. He might even be able to use it together to explode with even greater power. However, the Lord of Heaven did not hear him. He continued to use his hard body to collide with Tianyun. He wanted to see who was harder. Damn it! He actually did not listen to me. Elder Shao Tian gritted his teeth in anger. If the Lord of Heaven used a weapon, his chances of winning would undoubtedly increase greatly. He might even be able to crush Tianyun. However, the Lord of Heaven did not use a weapon. He was about to explode in anger. Elder Shao Tian, it seems that you do not understand your disciple's heart. As a member of the giant rock tribe, his opponent uses their fists and bodies to hit him. These are the two techniques that he is most proud of. Do you think he will use other techniques? Elder East Cloud laughed coldly at the side. Your disciple still knows the rules and knows what to do. The giant rock tribe was most proud of their fists and bodies. Now that they were being suppressed by Tianyun, how could he admit defeat? Taking out a weapon was equivalent to admitting defeat. Thus, even if he lost, he had to use the most basic techniques to fight to the end. Nonsense. The process is not important. What is important is the result. Elder Shao Tian did not care that much. He only wanted to win this match. Elder East Cloud shook his head. He could not be bothered with his disciple's thoughts. If he could not even understand his own disciple's thoughts, how could he be a master? However, the Lord of Heaven could not be bothered with him. He continued to use his most primitive abilities to continuously collide with Tianyun. Tianyun also did not use any weapons. He continued to use all kinds of fists to smash. The Lord of Heaven was sent flying again and again. They were both using the same techniques, but the Lord of Heaven was slightly inferior. The Lord of Heaven also used martial arts. Combined with his bloodline defense, he should be able to fight against many opponents of the same level. However, against Tianyun, he was filled with a deep sense of powerlessness. He was completely crushed. Under the final punch, the Lord of Heaven was sent flying and vomited blood. When he landed heavily on the ground, he did not faint. Instead, he collapsed on the ground and laughed with tears in his eyes. He never thought that he would lose to a human, an opponent that he could never imagine. You're really tough. Tianyun waved his hand and looked at the Lord of Heaven lying on the rock. He smiled faintly and said, "But thank you for being so persistent in fighting against me. We, the giant rock tribe, will not use any weapons when facing an opponent like this." The Lord of Heaven sat up and said in admiration, "You are the first human that I have met with such a tough body. I admire you." Chapter 1097. Yi Tianyun won this round in the most domineering manner. Previously, Elder Xiao Tian had set the best of 3, and Yi Tianyun's side had won 2 rounds consecutively. There was no need to compete in the remaining round, and he had won it directly. Not only that, but the Lord of Heaven also admired him greatly and vaguely saw him as a friend. How was he still an enemy? He was almost becoming a friend. "Elder Xiao Tian, you've lost." Elder Dong Yun looked at Elder Xiao Tian. He was so happy that he almost laughed out loud. Elder Xiao Tian's expression was ugly. He never thought that he would lose to Elder Dong Yun, who was at the bottom of the Hall of Gods. He had always disapproved of Elder Dong Yun's way of doing things. He didn't reply. Instead, he walked over to the Lord of Heaven and said coldly, Mountain, what's the meaning of this? I asked you to take out your weapon just now. Why didn't you do so?" "Elder Xiao Tian, our giant rock tribe has our own rules. The other party didn't use any weapons and used our greatest advantage to attack. We can't possibly break the rules." The Lord of Heaven had already crawled up. His injuries weren't very serious. Although he had vomited blood from Yi Tianyun's attack, it was only an ordinary injury and not a very serious one. A loser is a loser. What's the point of breaking the rules? You're a loser now. Get out. I won't take you in as a disciple, especially a disciple with such a rotten brain. Elder Xiao Tian was completely furious. This meant that Mountain didn't listen to him, so there was no need for him to stay by his side. The Lord of Heaven's body stiffened. He slowly knelt down and said in a deep voice, that disciple was unfilial. "I'm sorry, Elder." With that, he kowtowed 3 times and completely severed all ties with Elder Xiao Tian. From now on, the 2 of them would have nothing to do with each other. Humph. Elder Xiao Tian coldly snorted. He turned to look at Elder Dong Yun and said, "Seems like your new disciple isn't bad. He even knows how to make use of such dead rules. I'm really looking forward to the competition in the palace. When the time comes, I'll see what other skills they have besides strength." After saying that, he waved his hand and left with his people, as well as the defeated Golden Jade Lord of Heaven. Although the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven had lost, he still obeyed Elder Xiao Tian's words. This was the main point. Losing wasn't scary. What was scary was not listening to his instructions and losing. That was what he couldn't tolerate the most. After Elder Xiao Tian left, they all looked at the Lord of Heaven with sympathy. "Shan Yan, Lord of Heaven, why don't you join us?" Yi Tianyun walked over and smiled. The Lord of Heaven was not a sinister person. He had always been straightforward. This could be seen from the way they talked about rules. This fellow had a one-track mind and had always abided by the clan's rules. Join your side. The Lord of Heaven was stunned. He was originally a disciple of the Palace of Gods. At most, he would just have to change masters. There wasn't much of a problem. Can I really join? He hesitated for a while and finally asked. He still wanted to stay in the Palace of Gods. "There's nothing you can't do. The prerequisite is that you can pass our assessment." The Imperial Dragon of Heaven walked out and grinned. "Your character isn't bad. I admire you. However, you still have to pass the assessment. Otherwise, you won't be able to join." The others smiled and nodded. Although the Mountain Rock Heavenly Monarch was on the same side as Elder Xiao Tian, their relationship wasn't too deep. Especially when he didn't listen to Elder Xiao Tian's words. This made them happy. Some people had their own bottom line. The Lord of Heaven had his own bottom line. Only a cultivator with a bottom line would be able to go further in life. Thank you. The Lord of Heaven was extremely grateful. I will work hard to pass everyone's assessment. If I can't, I won't have the face to join you. Let's not talk about the assessment for now. Let's drink first. Elder Dong Yun was in a good mood. He had just won against Elder Shao Tian. How could he not be happy? They returned to the private room and continued to enjoy the wine. Without Elder Shao Tian, they instantly felt that the wine was especially fragrant and sweet. Little junior brother, I didn't know that you knew the rules of other clans. If the Lord of Heaven used a weapon, what do you think your chances of winning are? The Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven asked. The others looked over. Even the Lord of Heaven looked over. What if he used a weapon? Yi Tianyun slowly put down his wine cup and smiled. Let's drink. Let's not talk about this anymore. Seeing that Yi Tianyun wasn't willing to answer, they could only stop asking. Some felt that he could still win, while others felt that he couldn't. Yi Tianyun drank another cup and didn't say anything else. The result was needless to say. Let alone the Lord of Heaven using a weapon, even if he burned his essence blood to fight him, he wouldn't be the slightest bit weaker. It's about time to improve my cultivation. Things here were temporarily put on hold. The next step was to go to Heaven Pilfering Sacred Land to cultivate and improve his cultivation. Soon, things here were over. Through this banquet, their relationship improved a lot. Especially after this duel, they had gained a deeper understanding of him, and the relationship between them had undoubtedly improved by leaps and bounds. After saying that they were going to Heaven Pilfering Sacred Land, they all revealed envious gazes. The Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven and the others didn't have the chance to go to Heaven Pilfering Sacred Land. It was an extremely strict place and not so easy to go. They needed a lot of contribution points to be able to stay in Heaven Pilfering Sacred Land for a while. For example, if Yi Tianyun wanted to cultivate, he would at most be given a month's time. It was enough to show how precious it was. According to Elder Go Huang's words, Yi Tianyun could look for him once he was ready. If he wanted to go to Heaven Pilfering Sacred Land, he had to go through the approval of these high-level elders. Even Elder Dong Yun couldn't do it. Under the guidance of the guards, Zhang Xian soon arrived before Elder Go Huang. There wasn't any trouble this time. It was obvious that Elder Go Huang had left some instructions on the token in order to avoid any unnecessary trouble. This would undoubtedly make things much more convenient. You're finally here. I know about your situation. You just joined the God's Creation Palace and already caused such a huge commotion. Elder Go Huang shook his head and laughed. Furthermore, you even joined Elder Dong Yun's camp. It seems like your character isn't bad. Elder Dong Yun's side isn't bad. In the past, Elder Dong Yun was a super genius. It's just that his personality was different and the cultivation path he took was slightly different. No matter what, he's definitely a good elder. Nothing here could be hidden from the eyes of these elders. As long as he wanted to understand, he would be able to know everything in the next second. Elder Dong Yun is naturally a good elder. Yi Tianyun smiled and said, Then, Elder Go Huang, I wonder if you can go to Heaven Pilfering Sacred Land now. Chapter 1098. Elder Go Huang brought Yi Tianyun to tear through space and quickly arrived at the side of the teleportation formation. This teleportation formation was a little special. There were 2 guards guarding it. The other teleportation formations did not have any guards here, which proved that the place this teleportation formation reached was very important. Elder Go Huang. The 2 guards bowed to express their respect. Elder Go Huang nodded and brought Yi Tianyun to the teleportation formation. Then, he placed his hand on the stone tablet beside him. After transferring the star power in, the teleportation formation quickly lit up and enveloped the 2 of them. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared and appeared in another area. Yi Tianyun looked around. There was nothing around him. Everything was empty. The place where the teleportation formation was located was even more peculiar. It was on top of a floating boulder and not on a planet. Without a doubt, this place was very remote. The heaven-stealing divine land was actually in such a remote place, and it seemed to be very strict. He could tell that there weren't many people who could truly touch that stone tablet. This meant that if they wanted to come here, they had to personally lead the way. Otherwise, they would not be able to come here. It was so strict that it was truly astonishing. It seemed that it would be extremely difficult to come here through other methods. If he didn't even know where he was, how would he be able to come here? Isn't this heaven-stealing divine land a little too strict? Tianyun sighed from the side. The heaven-stealing divine land is the cultivation ground of our 5 divine domains, so it will definitely be stricter. There is even a strict time limit. How much time can be allocated to each divine domain is fixed. Elder Go Huang said, because there are so many cultivators, there is very little time for them to spread out. Unless it is a relatively outstanding disciple, they will not be given this reward. I can see that the other divine domains' teleportation formations are nearby. Tianyun turned his head to look. The surroundings were empty, and he did not see any other teleportation formations. More or less, it's not far from here. I will bring you to the heaven-stealing divine land now. Use it well, it will be enough for you to break through to the 9th refinement Earth Lord. Only by reaching the 9th level of the Earth Monarch realm can one be considered to be standing on a high platform. Elder Go Huang was very much looking forward to Tianyun breaking through to the 9th refinement Earth Monarch. Although the 8th refinement Earth Monarch was not bad, the 9th refinement was the true peak. They would only allow cultivators who could break through to the 9th refinement of the Earth Monarch realm to cultivate in such top-notch cultivation grounds. If they stopped at the 8th refinement of the Earth Monarch realm, then they would not have such a chance. Unless it was a disciple who had made great contributions, no one would be able to come in and take a look. The Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven and the Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven were not bad, but they were not judged to have the qualifications to break through to the 9 refinements Earth Monarch. In addition, they did not have too many contribution points, so they were not allowed to come. Thinking about it, the heaven-pilfering sacred land was so big, the resources were definitely not limitless. Now that it was managed by the 5 divine domains, they had strict restrictions on the number of people they could send. Otherwise, the entire heaven-pilfering divine land would turn into a wasteland. Tianyun nodded. He also wanted to break through to the 9th refinement Earth Monarch realm. After all, this was the goal of his current main mission. Immediately, Elder Go Huang brought him and directly flew forward. Under the guidance of Elder Go Huang, it could be said that it was pitch black in front of them. They could not see anything. It should be said that all the light seemed to have been sucked away, which was why they could not see any light. Tianyun could clearly feel that the surrounding star power had been sucked away. It could even be said that there was not a bit of star power in the surroundings. It was an extreme vacuum zone. The preparations are here. Elder Go Huang stretched out his hand and pointed. There was a pitch-black light in front of them, and it looked like a black ball. This could not be judged by the eyes, but by one's perception. The surrounding space was already pitch-black enough. Even if it emitted a pitch-black light, it was still pitch-black. Tianyun could feel that this pitch-black ball contained a special and strange energy. It was as if the energy that was extracted was gathered here. How did the heaven-pilfering divine ground form? Tianyun was very curious about this. No one knows. When we discovered it, it was already here. It just so happens to be sandwiched in the middle of our 5 divine realms. It belongs to a neutral training ground. Elder Go Huang took out a jade pendant and handed it to Tianyun. This jade pendant can only allow you to last in the heaven-pilfering divine ground for a month. Of course, this time point is for the outside world. The time inside often changes, so I can't say what the situation is. But there is one thing you have to remember. When this jade pendant is about to disappear, it is time for you to leave. If you don't leave, you won't be able to come out and will be completely trapped inside. His expression was serious. It did not seem like he was lying, but he was really serious. How could a training ground be so dangerous? It seemed that this jade pendant was equivalent to a protective talisman. If the protective talisman was gone, then it would be devoured and would never be able to come out. Got it. Tianyun held the jade pendant tightly. It's good that you know. 1 month later, I will come here to pick you up. Elder Go Huang reached out and patted his shoulder. He smiled. But there is no need to be so nervous. With this jade pendant, you will be very safe. As for inside, there will be super geniuses from other divine realms. Just ignore them. Tianyun nodded. After bidding farewell to Elder Go Huang, he directly drilled into the black ball and disappeared in front of Elder Go Huang. Kid, I hope you will be able to obtain a great fortune in here. Only when Earth Monarch Zhou Yen breaks through to the Lord of Heaven can he be considered the true Lord of Heaven. He shook his head, turned around and left. 1 month later, he would come here to pick him up. When Tianyun passed through the black ball, he immediately felt the jade pendant in his bosom become scorching hot. Following that, a bit of white smoke drifted out from it. Using his spiritual sense, he could clearly feel that the jade pendant was starting to disappear bit by bit. However, this process was very slow. At the same time, the jade pendant turned into a protective shield, firmly wrapping him inside. When he entered completely, it was no longer pitch black inside. Instead, it was a strange colorful world. It was completely different from the pitch black outside. This place looked like a fairyland. There were spirit herbs and spirit trees everywhere. On the side, there was a large pile of spirit spring water. As long as it was water, it was a spirit spring water. As long as it was a tree, it was a spirit tree of a high grade. As long as it was a grass, it was a spirit grass of a high grade. Even a piece of stone was a good forging material. It could be said that everything here was a treasure. Not a single item was a waste or an ordinary item. This scene deeply shocked him. This was the heaven-pilfering divine land. It really was a divine land. There were treasures everywhere. Chapter 1099. There were treasures everywhere, none of them were useless. This was like entering a mountain of gold and silver, the streets were filled with treasures. Anything he picked up casually was a treasure. Even the air here felt like he was inhaling an extremely dense star power that reverberated in his body. Just breathing in here was dozens of times better than outside. This meant that just breathing here for a day was equivalent to cultivating outside for a month. This difference was imaginable. If he cultivated here, wouldn't it mean that he could fly? This place is too magical, as expected of the heaven-pilfering sacred land. Everything around here must have been stolen. Tianyun was still deeply shocked. He had seen many cultivation places, but he had never seen such a heaven-defying existence. When he used the appraisal eye to scan the area, he saw an extremely terrifying force at the bottom. There was no doubt that there was an extremely huge core inside the heaven-pilfering sacred land, and it was an extremely violent one. If it wasn't a violent core, how could it devour the surrounding world? Not to mention devouring the surrounding world, even he himself was gradually being devoured. It was only because he was wearing the jade pendant that he could survive here. After entering, he finally understood what it meant. This place had been devouring intruders. As long as it was an external object, it would be quickly devoured and assimilated. This was the terrifying nature of the heaven-pilfering sacred land. If the jade pendant was gone, the result was obvious. It would be devoured. As for what it would become, it was not clear. Of course, without the jade pendant, he believed that it would not be devoured immediately, but would also disappear bit by bit. It should be related to cultivation. The stronger one was, the longer one could survive without the jade pendant. Just to be safe, he must have left before the jade pendant disappeared. If he was trapped here, it would not be worth it. Shortly after, Tianyun landed on the ground and walked over. The feeling of his feet was no different from the outside, it could be said to be exactly the same. He reached out to pick up a stone. This was a rare flower jade stone, a material used to make high-grade reincarnation-level treasures. When he picked it up, he immediately felt a strong sense of rejection from the material, as if it was unwilling to let him touch it. It was as if it was unwilling to be touched by him. Following that, it seemed to have come to life and kept jumping in his hand, trying to break free from his grasp. There's such a feeling of rejection. Tianyun felt a little strange. He immediately stuffed the jade flower stone into his storage ring to see if it would break free. To his surprise, he found that he couldn't store it in his storage ring at all. It was stuck outside, unable to enter at all. Space repulsion, this place is really strange. This heaven-pilfering divine ground doesn't allow people to bring anything out. Tianyun looked at the treasures around him. No wonder there were still materials here after so long. If it could be taken away, it would definitely be taken away by a large amount. There were so many materials. Although some of them were not of high quality, they would not be a problem for star venerates or earth venerates. Especially with so many disciples in the god domain, no amount of resources would be enough. If he could, he would. Who would have thought that he couldn't even bring it with him? So many treasures could only be seen. What a pity. Take it away. Tianyun's eyes flashed, and the jade flower stone in his hand disappeared as he forcibly put it into his inventory. At this moment, the jade flower stone lay obediently in his inventory, unable to leave. No matter how stubborn it was, he could still take it away. This was the wondrous use of the system's inventory. It looks like I can still take it away. I thought I couldn't. Tianyun's eyes lit up. This meant that he could take away a large number of treasures. Others might not be able to take them away, but he could. The inventory in his body could be said to be endless, it could not be filled at all. He could take as much as he wanted. Immediately after, he plundered and collected everything he needed. No matter how much they struggled, it was useless. He directly collected them and cut off the connection between them. Awesome! Tianyun felt very refreshed. He easily collected a large pile of treasures. However, he didn't take everything. He only took what he felt was not bad. If he took everything, it would be too crazy. After collecting a large pile, he checked the surroundings and didn't find any cultivators. It was obvious that there were very few people here. The jade flower stone was the most expensive. He could feel that this jade flower stone was very special. According to the price, it was at least a low-grade heavenly Tao treasure. To use a low-grade heavenly Tao treasure to send people in, the price was really high. Therefore, it was certain that there were very few people here. Other than the high price of sending people in, there was also the restriction. As for what the restriction was, it was not clear. It's about time to go through the tribulation. Tianyun felt that he had time now. He could choose to go through the tribulation to break through to the 8th refinement, and then directly break through to the 9th refinement. Level up to the 8th refinement. Ding, experience deducted. Congratulations to player Tianyun for successfully breaking through to the 8th refinement. Kaboom! Then, thick clouds formed in the sky. Although this place devoured everything, it could still form the tribulation. However, when the tribulation appeared, it started to be devoured at a speed visible to the naked eye. At this time, the tribulation started to get angry. Violent lightning started to strike from the sky, and its power increased rapidly. However, the devouring speed here was not just for show. It started to devour at a crazy speed. Of course, Tianyun suffered. Very soon, he had to endure the violent lightning. After he blocked it, he realized that he had already absorbed a little more than half of the lightning. The rest was completely bearable. It seems that breaking through here will be much easier than usual. Tianyun noticed the problem. This world could devour the tribulation, which meant that it could help to slow down the power of the tribulation. The reason why there were so few 9th refinement Earth Lords was mainly because the test of the 9th refinement was too scary. Of course, the most important thing was when the ninth refinement Earth Lord broke through to the Lord of Heaven. That was the most difficult. Because the ninth refinement Earth Lord was scary enough. If one broke through to the Lord of Heaven, even the heavens would not be willing to accept it. Therefore, many eighth refinement Earth Lords thought that breaking through to the ninth refinement Earth Lord was a success. Little did they know that breaking through to the Lord of Heaven was the scariest. If one went through the tribulation here, it would be much easier. It might still be limited, but at least it would be greatly reduced. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.